Why are you talking about the United States? Is there like, is this a disease? Are you incapable? Are you like an albino who flees from the point like they flee from the sun? Why? No! Ukraine! Ukraine! You listen! Ukraine! They have funded secessionist groups.
I'm just saying that
they have brought troops to the border. Putin has said Ukraine is a part of Russia.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. Tell us who you are and how we should refer to you as.
Okay, I'm a PhD. I'm a graduate now. I did my doctoral work at the University of Toronto, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow now. And my focus is on international relations and international development.
Gotcha. Definitely exceeding my education. All right, hit me up. What contentions do you have with my my talking points?
Sure. So we discussed this a little bit privately over email, and I've listened to, I think at this point, most of your recent videos on the topic, and I listened to your debates with Kolinsky and with the Jacobin writer, both of which I enjoyed immensely, by the way. So I think there's three propositions that you put forward that I would actually disagree with. So it seemed like you were drawing a few inferences. Number one, you seem to think that Russian imperialism is, uniquely nefarious or detrimental when it comes to the impact on populations in that region or anywhere. You seem to believe that, NATO's modus operandi, or its rationale for existence, is really to act as a deterrent to future Russian aggression, and that it's mainly a defensive organization. And three, that Russia, you seem to believe that Russia, tends to use coercion as opposed to incentives, or it focuses almost exclusively on, I guess you could call it sticks as opposed to carrots, unlike U.S. Intervention or, other forms of Western imperialism. So those were the three inferences or propositions I took issue with. So you can let me know if I've characterized them correctly or maybe misinterpreted you, but otherwise, yeah, that's what I wanted to push back on.
No, I say you've got it. However, the slippery debate tactic of background audio is definitely starting to take its toll. Is there a fan in the room that you're in by chance, or an air conditioning unit?
Yeah, it's not the fan; it's just the central heat. I'll change to push to talk. It might be better.
I think it'll pick it up regardless. I'm wondering if there's a way in desktop Discord. Actually, hold on. Let me see if I can open up a desktop Discord page to see. Open Discord in your browser. Here we go. Let me see which settings it keeps active. Click on everything that looks like a bicycle. Thank you. Cool. Awesome. Love my captchas. Enter Discode authorization. Okay, so for your desktop web page, by chance, in the bottom left, is there a little user settings cogwheel?
Yes.
If you hit that, wait, where it says voice connected, is there a noise suppression powered by Crisp icon? It should look like a series of vertical lines adjacent to each other, like 5 in kind of a diamond pattern.
Voice connected? No, it's just the bars and then video below that screen. The little phone symbol with the X, and then there's the user settings. That's it.
Gotcha. In the user settings for voice and video, see if there's anything there, a setting which mitigates background audio. There could be a couple different types of things, because I know the app version has a few different ways of muting background audio. Sorry, okay. I'm not trying to be annoying. I'm just...
There's noise reduction. Should I click turn that on?
Yeah, give that a go.
That's on.
Okay. Are there any other settings which pertain to background audio?
Echo cancellation. That's on. Noise reduction. Let me just see. Camera. Yeah, that's about it. Output device. Yeah, that's all I saw. Which I just is it a little bit better right now?
Maybe marginally. It's definitely suffering from the fact that it's the desktop web page. Here, let me think. You know,
Should I try
that's
push to
a
talk?
little bit better. Well, that would make a difference because when it activates your mic setting, it'll pick up whatever's picked up by the way. It's not actually registering you when you're not talking, which means that the default audio pickup is functioning as it should.
Okay, I
You know,
have my
I'll say let's just go forward. You know, I'm finicky about this, but it's no big deal, and I'm not doing this to put you off your game. Hit me,
okay.
destroy me with your brain.
Okay, yeah. So I laid out those are the three propositions I have an issue with. So I guess I was curious as to the first proposition, your belief that Russian, imperialism or aggression in that region is uniquely nefarious, or that they don't use a combination of incentives and coercion is something I was just wondering if you could expand on that, because if you look at Russian, at least the way I read or evaluate the situation, if you look at Russian actions in that region, it actually is not evident to me that Putin, despite being, obviously a horrendous autocrat, is not actually looking to engage in, unilateral aggression in that region outside of very specific circumstances, if he can avoid it. So that's really what I wanted to, well, I guess, get your position on that first, and then I could say where I disagree with it.
Well, it seems like he keeps doing it anyway. I don't know how this is him avoiding it unless he can't avoid it when he's the one who keeps going out of his way to do it. You know, between Georgia, Crimea, Ukraine now, you know, like the it seems like there's definitely a pretty consistent pattern of them taking, you know, adjacent military action, or at the very least, signaling an interest in using their military strength as a way of controlling or bullying their neighbors. It goes beyond that. Russian state media like constantly refers to Ukraine as like Russian land. Like pretty unambiguously, right? That's the whole Ukraine divide, where they treat Ukraine essentially just like a vassal state, like they feel as though it's their entitled land. Additionally, there have been so many, and you know, I didn't take the time to compile all these beforehand, but there is so much evidence of Russia using, I guess you'd call dirty diplomacy tactics to try to bully its neighbors into submission. From trying to dictate the diplomatic policies their neighbors take with the West as a way of, you know, striking fear into their hearts, to you know, attempted coups, funding separatist groups, you know, terror attacks, false flags done against themselves to justify action against them, which they have a long habit of doing. You know, stuff like that. It definitely seems like Russia has a plan, which is to rebuild geopolitical hegemony in its space of the world, and it enacts that plan not through forming like really strong economic ties, because it can't really do, because it's a poor country, um, but you know, through bullying their neighbors with a disproportionately large military. I don't think the United States really does this. When we engage in behavior like that, it's usually in countries that are outside the imperial core. We engage in this behavior with the imperial periphery. If there's a country with natural resources we want to exploit, you know, then we engage in this behavior with them in order to make them supplicant to American business interests. But I think there's a big difference, at least in terms of outcomes, between engaging in behavior like that and just literally invading your neighbor and annexing territory, which is a much older and I think much more dangerous kind of aggression.
Okay, yeah. So regarding those points, it's true they certainly have acted that way in the cases that you mentioned, right? And the issue I have there is, I'm sure as a sociology, major and a sociologist, you understand there's dangers of selecting on the dependent variable, which is what happens when you just look at the areas where they actually have outright, intervened in militarily. But there are other areas or other countries in that particular region where Russia has, in fact, he's tried to use incentives or economic diplomacy by constructing a Eurasian economic zone, and he's done this, in Belarus. He's done this in Kazakhstan. He's, done this with Armenia, and it's actually in his interest. But Belarus, if we take one example, over here, Belarus at one point cut off Russian crude because they were having a feud in terms of the prices that were being charged. They diversified by then switching to U.S. imports and European imports, and there was a bit of an economic battle between Russia and Belarus at that point, where Putin cut off oil supplies periodically. Then he increased the oil. Then he started it again, and Belarus has continued to import from Europe and the United States, and they have not actually. They've continued to diversify, and you haven't seen an invasion in of Belarus. Kazakhstan has the largest oil, reserves in the Caspian Sea area. You have Russian multinationals operating in, that country along with Western multinationals. Putin has not made any overtures for outright invasion. Armenia, that's an
Wait,
area
I'm
where
sorry.
both.
Just to clarify, I don't think you should need to have plans to or have already annexed all of your neighbors. I'm not saying that Russia has never engaged in non-annexation based, diplomacy. I'm only saying that the fact that they do that at all in the modern day is extremely noteworthy.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah, sure. But I mean, in the case of Ukraine, in the case of Georgia, and then the other example I suppose would be Chechnya, where you have a long history of Russian or Soviet atrocities in that particular region. What I'm saying is it was shaped by very specific circumstances, and it's not necessarily indicative of some broader Russian program of aggression and conquering that geopolitical area. But I would also take issue with the notion that we don't see other countries doing this. Even if you just put Russia's record up against U.S. imperialism in the recent past, I mean, the U.S. has engaged in certain acts which are far more criminal than what Russia did in Ukraine or what they did in Georgia, when you really looked into it. Just to take one example, I mean, if you go back 1989, right, the Bush administration's invasion of Panama, deposing Noriega and imposing a puppet government. I mean, I don't need to tell you these type of things, but in my view, that was actually more criminal than what was done in Crimea.
Well, hold on.
Not to excuse the latter. Yeah.
We're not talking about criminality here. The issue is that, for one, annexation is not behavior that we really engage in these days. That's not to say America doesn't maintain a current holding empire. We certainly do. But this isn't just like, coups done in countries with a net GDP per person of 8, so that we can get better like business contracts there. I'm not downplaying that to say that it's not horrible. It is. And a life taken in the United States is no more valuable than a life taken in Panama or in Iraq or Afghanistan. But the behavior that Russia's engaging in right now in Ukraine is unique. I mean, this invasion annexation stuff in Europe, of all places. And not just so, but while posturing potential nuclear warfare with the West, the Russia has made it pretty clear that they would consider NATO expansionism or even just like kind of a defense of Ukraine to be an act of war against Russia, and an act of war between. Good Lord, what is that?
Yeah, sorry. I was
Oh,
outside on my street.
no
Motorcycle,
worries.
yeah. Go
An,
ahead.
an act of war between two countries with nuclear weapons. We all know what that means, what that implies. I think there is a significant difference between imperial countries like the United States fucking around with, again, this isn't to downplay its severity, countries outside the imperial core, and Russia engaging in land grabs with their neighbors. We also have, we're the head seat of international trade. The United States dollar is the international unit of currency for all, intents and purposes. Um, Most of the diplomatic control that we hold in the world is done through economic hegemony, not through military hegemony. Military hegemony is I don't say it's vestigial, obviously there's a reason we keep military bases in the places that we do, but, we don't keep them in like Japan in case Japan gets invaded by Manchuria or something, it's a little bit of a holdover. Russia doesn't have the power base to build an imperial core that way. They don't have the economy. So you see like situations like this, but like the Kazakhstan thing, they just sent in troops to quell protests. And sure, Kazakhstan seemed to want those, but like, isn't that the classic strongman thing, A lot of
Oh,
Kazakhstan's instability is a product of Soviet and post-Soviet economic and political policies, and the fact that countries next to Russia know they can't really buddy up with the West's stronger trading bloc, because if they do, Russia's going to give them hell for it. So in a way, Russia's dragging their neighbors down too. They terrify their adjacent, former USSR Warsaw Pact neighbors into staying outside of the trade relations that might allow them to grow, and in so doing they create the instability that Russia then runs into like save to correct. This is like very classic, establishing the premises by which you seize control again.
okay, yeah. So a couple points there. Number one, I'm not going to downplay here the criminality, of Russian annexation in Crimea or Russian intrusion into, Russian violence in Chechnya or intrusions or, their intrusions into Georgia in 2008. What I will say, I actually make a distinction. I don't make necessarily a distinction between imperialism in the form of annexation and other forms of imperialism if the consequences of one are actually worse in terms of material deprivation and violence inflicted on the underlying population. So while Russia's invasion of Crimea, again, it was done because Russia, Putin, who's an opportunist, and he saw a very clear opportunity to take a region where you had a dominant ethnic Russian group that would have actually, that was pro-Russian, that would have welcomed the invasion. I think in terms of the effects or the consequences
after creating that sentiment, of course. Because Russia has been agitating in the region for a long time. Oh, that land actually belongs to us, Oh,
sure,
wouldn't you be better off rejoining the motherland? Like that kind of thing. So kind of tilting the scale a little bit.
a little bit, but there was also some type of an autonomous underlying, support for that type of, a pro-Russian sentiment, even, like that predated that because of, the history between Ukraine or between Crimea and Russia. And also then we can look at what happened with the ousting of, Viktor Yanukovych, which, I'm not against in any way supporting his rule, but in terms of the initial election that brought him to power, all international observers say that election was relatively free for that particular region. But what I would just say in terms of Russian actions in Crimea, if the act of annexation actually has a less detrimental effect on the population than some other form of imperialism, for example, U.S. intervention through other means by supporting paramilitaries and corrupt governments in Colombia as using the drug war as a pretext, or militarizing the drug war in Mexico, etc., which has led to the uprooting and killing, violent repression of tens of thousands of peasants at this point. I mean, as a consequentialist, I think you're a utilitarian. I think you could appreciate that point as well. That simply because it's an annexation, we don't necessarily.
They have funded secessionist groups. They're doing that in East Ukraine right now. They're doing the thing that we do. They're cribbing our style.
Sure, but I'm talking. Yeah, sure, but I'm talking about the the impact of the actual intervention. You seem to be taking the position that annexation on its own is uniquely nefarious and uniquely something that sets Russian imperialism apart from other imperial powers. I'm saying, yeah, okay. So what I'm saying is that, and I think you would appreciate this as a consequentialist, if one model of imperialism, for example, the U.S. model in Central America and Latin America, has more nefarious or detrimental effects on the underlying population in terms of violence inflicted, for example, on marginalized communities, on peasant groups, and if the material deprivation as a result from that model of imperialism is worse than the model which involves direct annexation, like in Crimea. And I think, empirically we can show this. The effect on the Crimean population from Russian annexation, while criminal, doesn't come close to the deprivation and the violence inflicted on Colombian and Mexican peasants as a result of U.S. imperialism. Then I'm not necessarily, in the camp where I would say Russian actions are, necessarily, more detrimental or somehow more nefarious than the U.S. model. That's not to excuse the criminality of that invasion, because I don't, based on international, law, clearly it's something that should be condemned. But I wouldn't automatically say Russia is, separate from the United States or other imperial powers for that reason.
Well, the problem is that we're jumping across levels of severity, time periods, types of outcomes. There's a reason why the Cold War went down the way that it did, I think that an invasion of Vietnam that kills 500,000 is probably morally much more defensible, not at all, mind you, but still more, than an invasion of East Germany from West Germany, which would have killed 50,000. The reason being the potential for the end of the world. Russia's playing a really dangerous game right now. They're essentially denying their neighbors the ability to enter NATO. And if they don't enter NATO, that means they're a fair playground for Russia to invade. And then Russia moves westward until their borders match NATO's, and then the same problem, it emerges twice.
Okay, yeah, so that's actually another, the proposition I would take issue with. I don't think there's any evidence that if you actually got rid of NATO, I'm not suggesting that, the countries that are a part of NATO should, have their membership revoked. But what I'm saying is that even absence that membership, there's no evidence that, Putin, he came to power, as I mentioned, with by forging an alliance with oligarchs and by renationalizing strategic Russian industries. It's based on a form of, patronage and, crony capitalism domestically in Russia, which is what he uses to shore up his political and his social and his economic power. But there's no evidence that he's actually interested in expanding westward in that type of a fashion. On the contrary,
he's doing it right now. He right now has troops on his western border.
Yeah, and so if you look at whether or not he invades, I don't know if you're familiar with the journalist Patrick Coburn, but he's spoken. Are you familiar with him at all?
Even so, wait. Journalist? I can't predict the future. He might
No.
not invade, but even if he didn't, the fact that he's threatening invasion of Ukraine, a country that he's already annexed and a point of moving westward, that is already an indication of imperial intent moving west.
So in terms of Ukraine, first of all, so again, going back to what I think will actually happen, it's true he might do it, and if that happens, there's a number of solutions that I think should be on the table. But Patrick Coburn, who's an investigative journalist who has spoken to a former Ukrainian general, some on the ground now, saying this is all bluster in terms of Putin's strategy. He gains everything by putting forward the perception of invasion without actually carrying out the invasion.
So wait, this is irrelevant. You can't say that you don't have imperial. So wait, if it's a bluster, what would the bluster be other than to signal imperial intent westward? Either they conquer East Ukraine, all of Ukraine, or they don't want Ukraine to join NATO, because if Ukraine does join NATO, which they want to, the people of Ukraine want to join NATO, that would mean that Russia would no longer be able to freely fuck with Ukraine without risking nuclear war.
That is the main incentive. He doesn't want actually NATO encroachment, in
why
other areas. Why doesn't he want that? Because
Ukraine,
he doesn't. So
Ukraine wants to be part of NATO.
And so, what should be said to Ukraine in terms of negotiations? If the population wants to be part of NATO, I actually don't think that should be rescinded. But what I'm saying is that oftentimes it's political and economical elites who want to join NATO, and it's not necessarily the underlying population
The
that
people,
has
there have been
desire.
polls on whether or not
in Ukraine, I agree. But I'm saying that oftentimes it's economic and political elites who have an incentive in joining NATO, because just recently a British investment bank did a study showing that foreign direct investment goes up, benefiting certain sectors when a country joins NATO. Now, sometimes that benefits, of course, sometimes that benefits the population, sometimes it doesn't. But I'm saying the reason Putin actually fears NATO expansion is because, contrary to what you said, NATO is not primarily a defensive organization.
Hold on. We're jumping past your last point, which I still take severe issue with. Russia absolutely has intentions to expand westward. The idea that there is no chance whatsoever of an invasion being real, that all of this is just posturing, I
didn't say that.
Well, if he does invade, then that's it on the table right there, expansion westward. And even if he doesn't, the fact that he wants to keep Ukraine as a kind of NATO-less buffer state is an indication that he wants to expand imperial power westward. And it's not as though Russia just doesn't want Ukraine to be in NATO. Russia doesn't want anybody to be in NATO. Russia doesn't want NATO to exist at all. So I don't see any reason why NATO's non-existence wouldn't be an inspiration for Russia to creep ever westward until they hit a country that had nuclear weapons, in which case, of course, they would have to stop, and engage in other tactics.
Okay, so a couple points there. Number one, in terms of Russian westward expansion. So, there's a number of scholarly pieces on this. One of them by Chaim Shinar, who's written in European Review, who is no fan of Putin at all. He believes that Russia has certain geopolitical ambitions in that particular region. But he himself points out that the conditions that compel a Russian annexation or Russian encroachment are based on the following factors. Number one, opportunism, and number two, the presence of a large ethnic Russian cohort or underlying population in the region that Putin actually wants to annex or extend his power over.
That's not acceptable. Wait, that's not acceptable. You can you can't. Wait. You can't. Wait, hold on. This is appeasement logic. The first thing autocrats do is annex territories that have ethnically adjacent populations. Did we learn nothing from World War II? That's their first excuse. Oh, why did I take this territory? Well, these were part of my empire anyway. It never stops there. Why would in the logic of an autocrat who's willing to bring the world to the brink of World War III at the behest of invading Ukrainian territory, do you really think this is about reuniting the people? Do you really think that all of this risk taking, all this money used is so the East Ukrainians, who he has essentially pushed towards him by funding secessionist movements and destabilizing the population, that all of this is just because he sincerely wants people of a shared ethnic background, in Russia, by the way, a very ethnically diverse country, to be under the same borders? He just wants land. It's the oldest thing that autocrats want. Everyone wants to find some other justification because there are a bunch of eggheads out of academia who think they've cracked the code. They want land. Autocrats want land. They want land. They always want land. They'll take all the land they can get. In the medieval days, they took whatever land they could get, no matter what. They would bribe off aristocrats to take fiefdoms. They would send their troops in. Wars would last for centuries if they could. And now we have nukes. But Ukraine doesn't have nukes because they gave up their nukes to Russia.
Yes. Yeah, I know. So let me just say a couple things regarding about what you did there in terms of what autocrats always have wanted and what dictators have always wanted. I mean, first of all, as somebody who's well schooled in Marxism, I'm sure you understand like the principle of modes of production, right? Because you just listed off a number of different modes of production that existed historically, and then explained how that drives forward expansionism. And what I'm saying is German fascism and German expansionism was driven by a very unique trajectory of German capitalism, fascism, and the ideology, of an eliminationist
All
anti-Semite like
autocrats.
Hitler, who wrote about, not all autocrats. I'm saying you can have an autocrat because based on the domestic concentrations and distribution of power, does not actually have an interest in expansion. What you named there was, if you look at people like Ellen Wood, who have written about the difference between feudal empires and the empires of antiquity and capitalist empires, that distinction absolutely matters. And what I'm saying is that Putin's
All
domestic power
autocrats
base, not all. I'm
want
saying though
land. Why have we been fighting over land for the entirety of human civilization? They were doing it during the days of the Romans, of the Macedonians.
Exactly, because that was based on a slave mode of production where they had
No,
to
no,
keep
no, 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 no,
acquiring
no.
more. Yes.
This is a misappropriation of Marxist terminology. You
No.
can't. No, it absolutely is. The material interests of the ruling class of a nation are to secure the greatest amount of power possible, to secure their reign, and to establish the premises by which they can last a lifetime. They can build a legacy. All leaders want to do this. Some fail,
But
some
the
don't.
form that takes will differ based on the mode of production.
And
this has been
conquering
well
your
established
neighbors
by-
is like the way of doing it.
but I'm saying
That's like the
conquering-
way.
Conquering your neighbors by direct annexation or actual military expansion is something that usually coincides with a very specific internal mode of production. And if you go back and you look at
That's
the
the
debates in
historical
terms of
norm.
German, the historical norm has always been empires driven by either the feudal mode of production, and if you look at Marxists like Robert Brenner, Ellen Wood, Perry Anderson, they very clearly link that to the internal dynamics in those societies. I'm saying under a
I
certain
can't
form
speak to the articles you're referring to. I do not
well,
see how a nation being feudal means that it would engage in land acquisitions.
because I'll tell you.
I
I'll tell you
understand.
that.
Yes, I understand, because the peasantry, because the more peasants, the more serfs you have, the more land, the more you get to toll. That means the more grain you get. I understand that. And
Not
in
just that, but-
in Ukraine, there's natural gas. In East Ukraine, a fuck ton of it. Natural resource
yeah.
acquisition is still a thing. Just because we
I
don't have
understand.
serfs doesn't mean that we don't benefit.
Okay, so you're right about the resources in Ukraine, and that's why I was pointing out to the importance of selecting not on the dependent variable when you try to actually put forward a hypothesis that's supposed to have predictive power. Why hasn't he taken Kazakhstan? Why hasn't he taken Belarus? Why hasn't he taken
Why hasn't
Armenia?
America taken Mexico? Maybe, for instance, Belarus
Because
and
Mexico has a very different
First of
form
all,
or model of imperialism. That's what I was pointing out.
he's
in terms
already
of, you know,
taken
what
Belarus and Kazakhstan. Both of those governments are already allied. Why would he need to?
allied. You're talking about direct annexation and military intervention.
Wait,
right?
hold on.
I mean, I'm saying that's
Wait,
not the norm.
You don't wait. You don't need to annex everything, but Ukraine isn't going to be an ally of Russia because they like us better. So they have to annex Ukraine. They're not they have tried now for years to make Ukrainians more amenable to Russian imperialism, and they have failed. Funding Eastern Ukrainian secessionists has not led to the Ukrainian people being more interested in joining up with Russia. Even East Ukraine isn't like swimming for it, right? So
Not swimming? Sure.
in the absence of those, more diplomatic solutions, they're resorting to the oldest one.
Yeah, they're resorting to it I'm saying they're resorting to that in Ukraine or Crimea because it contains very specific conditions that I mentioned that allow them to actually do it. But the issue I took with your initial proposition that Russian imperialism is one where they don't actually use a combination of incentives and coercion is what I was initially refuting. But now in these other states that I mentioned, you seem to be saying that they will, if it's possible, also use a combination of incentives when they can do that, and then sometimes use coercion under very specific circumstances if that, if the cost benefit analysis is such that he views that as beneficial to his aims. But in that case, then I don't see why Russian imperialism would actually be more detrimental than American or other Western forms of imperialism, especially when you then take into account the fact that NATO is not a defensive organization, has not been one since 1998.
Stop. These are adjacent points. Hold on. I never said Russia doesn't have allies. Obviously, Belarus and Kazakhstan are close to Russia. They don't really have a choice considering how hard Russia goes against any neighbors they have that end up siding with NATO. Kazakhstan in particular is pretty fucked because it doesn't really have the ties to China to fall into their geopolitical sphere, and they're not even in Europe, so they don't really have a chance of any kind of Western support. We wouldn't even be able to move troops there without taking the very long way around. So Kazakhstan never had any choice otherwise. We all know the history of Belarus, and we understand the collusion which has taken place between Belarus's government and Russia's. We know Belarus is not a democracy and that the will of the people is not being fairly represented there or in Russia. To be fair, it's not being well represented in Ukraine either. Better than Belarus, but not great. Now, Russia, the idea that Russia just like ever so like just only just ethnic, adjacencies, we've seen this. This is a classic excuse that imperialists engage in as a way of annexing neighboring territories until they run up against the territories that are too unfavorable towards them to annex. So Germany could just annex the Sudetenland and Austria because they got along well enough. There wasn't really that much of a fuss. That wasn't going to fly with Poland. So now he has to contrive some excuse to attack Poland, something he framed as a defensive measure, by the way, as did the Soviet Union in Poland. They both did that. Now, with Ukraine, like we understand what they're engaging in brinksmanship over this. They're threatening nuclear war effectively by suggesting that Ukraine's will to be a part of NATO is actually Western aggression against them. I think this is categorically different. And if you don't think that they wouldn't do the same thing to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania if it weren't for NATO, or if they wouldn't resume, of course they would. Why wouldn't they?
No, because what they want to do, what Putin wants to do, is construct a Eurasian economic zone, right? It's no different from bilateral investment and trade treaties.
Then why invade?
No, he has. So that's what, in certain circumstances where there's been conflicts between his attempt to construct a Eurasian economic zone, and there's been pushback from the leaders in these other countries that I've named, he hasn't actually invaded. In Ukraine, you had a very specific set of circumstances that actually coincided, with his opportunism and his and the overthrow of Yanukovych, which then created very specific conditions for him to then march into the Crimea. But what I'm saying, you seem to be taking the position that if NATO stopped expanding, all these other countries within that region would be under threat of invasion.
Yes,
and I'm saying there's
unequivocally, 100%, without a shadow of a doubt. If I could somehow travel into an alternate universe where NATO never expanded, I would kill myself if I didn't look at the map in 2021 to find that Russia's borders now extended to the edges of Germany. Okay, I would shoot myself dead right then at the moment. Of course they would. All they've wanted to do since the end of the Cold War is re-establish the old borders of their empire.
It's a position that actually isn't in line with what most IR scholars are saying about Russia's geopolitical ambitions, and it's a position that isn't borne out by Russia's behavior with other states currently. There's no.
Do they have big YouTube channels?
No, that's why. No, but that's why I think it's important to actually look at what's being stated in some of the relevant literature right now. Even the most anti-Putin, and I'm anti-Putin. So I know you've debated a lot of people who are pro-Russian,
I would consider framing Putin's intentions as merely a product of ethnic similarity to be a form of apologism. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I just think ethnic similarities are a geopolitical weak point that he can ply on as a way of integrating a population more effectively. But I don't think he actually gives a shit about the ethnic groups.
No, it's not apologism, right? It's just not apologetics, because I'm just actually looking at what the geopolitical reality is, and
that's what I think I'm doing. Well, you can't say it's not I'm just being realistic. Well, I think I'm being realistic.
No, because I'm saying that if your hypothesis was correct, for it to be robust and have explanatory power, there are certain observable implications we would expect to see, which have not materialized. And the fact that those observable implications have
East
not
Ukraine funding, Crimea, Czechia.
The situation in Georgia and the situation in Ukraine were driven by very specific on the ground
that seem to keep happening, right?
So,
it seems to keep. Wait, in 20 years we've had 4 invasions. That's not keep happening?
Do you know the situation in Georgia, what happened there? Because if you look
do you not think that was an extension of Russia flexing military power as a way to expand its geopolitical interests?
It was criminal and it was disproportionate. Oh yeah, of course they wanted to actually, further their geopolitical interests. But it's not a situation of them just actually seeing, furthering their naked ambitions to expand militarily and conquer other territories. It was because what happened in the case of Georgia was South Ossetia wanted to actually secede from Georgia. The Georgian president at the time, his name escapes me, but he believed he had gotten a green light from the Bush administration to go in and actually crush that secessionist movement in South Ossetia. He misread the Bush administration. They didn't give protection when Russia then just actually went in using the pretense to protect Russian troops or peacekeepers in South Ossetia, and
It
to,
seems
put
like
down
ethnic
to repel the
similarities.
Georgian invasion.
It seems like ethnic similarities are a really convenient, like fulcrum that Putin keeps leveraging as a way of engaging in imperialism against his allies.
There wasn't a significant ethnic component in South Ossetia, and that's why some scholars say he didn't actually annex that territory at the time. He simply moved in to repel the Georgian military from actually preventing secession. And the United States, which appears to have given, some ambivalent gestures to the Georgian president that they would support them with military arms, decided not to do that in the end under the Bush administration. But it's a more complicated situation than Putin just trying to invade, is what I'm saying. And I'm saying the observable implications.
It wasn't just trying to invade. You keep implying that my position is just that Putin is just literally wants to paint the map red and like everything will just be his borders or whatever. I think that he will use his military and other forms of hard diplomacy, like, funding secessionist groups or whatever, engaging in coups, which plans have been found for him to do this several times, in order to rebuild his geopolitical space. If he was just interested in a trading sphere, he wouldn't need to be threatening invasion. America doesn't need its troops, for example, to maintain the trading sphere that we have in West Europe. We have not recently threatened France with invasion, to my knowledge, though I wouldn't mind if we did. What he has to do, because Russia is economically pathetically weak compared to its other metrics, is that it has to bully its neighboring countries into playing the game. It has to say, hey, basically, like, if you try to, like, even look at the West, like, we're going to fuck you up. Russia's done this over and over, and this isn't like me reading into them. They've said this. They've explicitly said for decades now that the countries in their adjacency interested in what, like, that it's Western imperialism for them to want to be part of NATO. It's Western imperialism for them to trade with us. Russia's been explicit about this. Without their ability to incentivize allyship with a strong economy, the way that we can with West Europe, what they have to do is bully these guys until they have no other option.
Yeah, so what you've just described there is a conventional model of imperialism, and that was the position I was actually taking. You know what? Everything you just described there is something the United States has done throughout the 1980s, even the 1990s in Central and Latin America. They did it in the Balkans. They did it in the Middle East.
Yeah, but we don't annex territory. We don't.
That's what. You just said annexation isn't the main metric you're looking at.
But they're doing it. They're doing it at all.
They've done that in the case of Crimea. They didn't do it in South Ossetia.
I'm not saying they do it all the time. The fact that they do it at all, and they're threatening nuclear war. When was the last time America threatened nuclear war? Did we do it when we invaded Panama? Were we saying like, hey, funding like Panama like defense groups, it will be considered an act of war, which we will use the totality of our nuclear weapon. Like Russia does this. I don't fuck around with this nuclear war stuff. Okay, Ukraine is next to Poland. All right, we can't do this. The Russian brinksmanship. Listen, I'll be honest with you. Okay, if they were going for Georgia, like number 2, Bugal, actually Turkey is ours. Yeah. If they were going for Kazakhstan or whatever, like that's really bad, and I would oppose that. But I think there's a huge difference between advancing military borders up against nuclear armed NATO nations and just like bullying neighbors where that's not a potential consequence. In a consequentialist sense, like the nuclear war is the ultimate bad end state here, and Russia keeps threatening it. They keep bringing us closer to it. The only reason NATO exists at all these days is because countries next to Russia are fucking terrified of Russia and they want to be part of NATO.
That's not the case. So, scholars like Glenn Deason, who's a professor in Norway, I believe he's written and talked about this extensively. Since 1998, NATO actually repositioned itself as an offensive organization. The bombing of Yugoslavia,
against
which was
Russia,
a criminal bombing. Oh, yeah, within that region, within Eastern Europe. So the bombing of Yugoslavia, which was a criminal, military intervention, that's an example of the U.S. using force when investment and trade treaties don't actually go their way. But that was actually timed and coordinated by Albright to actually intersect with the anniversary of NATO's existence, because they needed a rationale. Wait, hold on.
You were being very charitable to Russia's intentions in Georgia, and your reading of the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia is that's what happens when you don't play ball with our trading. I'm pretty sure sure the Yugoslavian bombing by NATO had more going on there than the justifications that Russia used to invade Georgia. But I'm saying NATO doesn't exist to posture like military engagement against Russia. Russia's a nuclear power. NATO can't do shit against it.
I know it's NATO actually exists now. It was repositioned as an offensive organization, as Glenn Deason and others have pointed out, in order to actually project its own power in Eastern Europe. The bombing of the Balkans was deliberately coordinated, right, to coincide with the anniversary of NATO's existence, because they needed another rationale for its existence in the aftermath of the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. It is not a defensive organization, and it is not just it doesn't exist to act as a deterrent. And if you're actually legitimately concerned about preventing nuclear war, and I believe you are, you're sincere in that, as am I, then what you should actually be focusing on is preventing NATO from continuing its expansion. It's not about...
All right, no, wait, hold on. I got to push you hard on this. I got to push you hard on this. Okay, hold on. First of all, the Yugoslavia stuff is complicated, and I don't fully agree with the rationale that went into it, but like an ethnic cleansing was taking place. Something like 1.5 million Albanians were being displaced. The idea that like this was exclusively some offensive thing. Obviously, look, okay, I don't believe in any free lunches, all right? I don't think that like we intervene there out of the kindness that we feel towards Albanians, okay? Obviously, any military engagement we engage in is going to be a product of our geopolitical interests being made manifest through power. I don't disagree with that. I think that's the case with every country ever. However, with how much nuance you're willing to pull on Georgia, an instance of Russia cracking down with overwhelming military force in a way which perfectly coincided with their interests, I would say the bombing of Yugoslavia by NATO in response to an ethnic cleansing which affected millions of people was relatively light touch. Again, in a vacuum, bad and worth criticizing. In the context of a convo where you're being nuanced with Georgia, let's be nuanced with it. Additionally, like, that doesn't...
hold on a
the
second,
bombing of Yugoslavia doesn't mean this is an offensive... Yeah, yeah.
It is. I don't like to posture. I actually wrote my master's major research paper on the dissolution and bombing of Yugoslavia. I've delved into the literature and the scholarship on that. It was not done to stop ethnic cleansing, and atrocities were taking place from all sides, by the Serbs, by the Croatians,
this is my point with
by
Georgia.
the KLA. Yeah, but I'm just telling you, the bombing was specifically done because there was an impediment at this point for the U.S. or for Western penetration of capital within that particular region, and all of the actual industries that were bombed during that air campaign happened to be state-owned industries in Serbia. But leaving that aside, it was an act of aggression. It was a criminal bombing, and it was deliberately timed and coordinated to reposition NATO as an offensive organization, as Deason and others have pointed out. So there's good reason for Russia to actually fear expand. Now, it doesn't mean that NATO's planning a military invasion of Russia, because this came up with in the debate with Kalinsky. I agree with you. I don't believe any Russian leader, including Putin, believes that NATO is actually primed to invade Russia, or that NATO is actually going to plan any kind of military aggression into Russia, nor are NATO officials, working that angle either. But there's other reasons to have problems with ongoing NATO encroachment and expansion within that particular region.
The excuses that Russia uses are bullshit. They're completely made up. They're completely disingenuous. Again, like, the issue that I have again here is, like, you were willing to play like quite a bit of nuance with regards to the Georgia thing, which I think is way less justifiable than the Yugoslavian bombings. You keep acting as though I'm defending whole cloth the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia, when all I'm saying is I don't appreciate its framing relative to the charitability and nuance with which you're presenting the invasion of Georgia, especially since the vast majority of the damage done in the whole Albanian, Yugoslav, Kosovo, da-di-da-di-da, was a product of, the ethnic cleansing going on, not the bombing itself. Whereas in the case of the
bombing itself was far more damaging and detrimental to the populations than the actual ethnic cleansing, which only actually increased after the bombing took place. And it was not, I mean, if you actually look at what was
that was the ethnic cleansing. Wait, no.
No. I'm saying there was ethnic cleansing that Serbs were being ethnically cleansed from Croatia well before the intervention. That didn't actually compel U.S. interventionism.
I'm not saying we were acting like out of the kindness of our heart. Wait, hold on. You keep replying to arguments that I'm not making, and it's getting a little bit frustrating, okay?
Go on.
I'm not saying that our involvement there was kind-hearted, that it was done out of the kindness of our hearts, or anything like that. However, like, tens of thousands of Albanians died, and hundreds of thousands fled their homes. I think the estimated bombing death count from us was between 5 and 1,500. That's not good, people died. That's not good, but more people died and were displaced as a product of Russian involvement in Georgia, or at the very least displaced. I know a lot of people were displaced due to their involvement. I'm not sure what the death numbers were. I'd have to look.
The death numbers for the bombing of Yugoslavia as a result of NATO bombing was estimated at over 2,000 at the time, so it wasn't actually just a few hundred.
The Yugoslav estimate is 2,000 plus, whereas other estimates have put it between 1,000 and 500. So I said between 500 and 1,500 because ultimately there's no way for us to fully know. Either way, tens of thousands of Albanians were killed. The overwhelming majority of death and terror done there was in the ethnic cleansing that was taking place. So all of this parsing aside, I don't think this means that Russia's concerns about NATO are justified. I'm not saying, when I say NATO is a defensive organization, I don't mean they're incapable of using military force against other nations. I'm saying that the presence they take with regards to Russia is they protect countries from being fucked with by Russia. NATO in Latvia and Estonia or whatever, like this isn't to front against Russia. This is to protect them, you know?
Yeah, so let me just, the rationale of NATO expansion actually isn't at this point deterrence from Russian aggression. That's not the reason they want as an organization to continue their expansion into Eastern Europe or into Southeast Europe at all.
Why do Ukrainian citizens want NATO membership then?
They want the leaders, the economic and the political elites of a large number of countries want NATO membership because sometimes it often brings certain economic benefits like increases in foreign direct investment.
Stop doing that. The people of Ukraine. You keep bringing it back to the elites, like the only reason why the people of Ukraine might want it.
Of course, because Ukraine has also a history of having integration with Western Europe, a certain degree of integration with Western Europe. There's a population that actually generally wants those closer ties. And of course, there are polls and there are situations where the underlying population might actually want membership within NATO.
What is the language you keep using? Underlying population, there might be polls. We have the polling data. The people of Ukraine overwhelmingly...
I understand in Ukraine we have this polls. I was talking hypothetically there might be polls in other places in the future. So yes, I understand that you can have a situation where the population will want to be a part of NATO. I'm not actually saying that should be, rescinded. I'm fine with a population.
Why do they want it? What, because they're like buddy-buddy with the West? Like, I don't think people in France care that much about being part of NATO. If you ask the average, like, France citizen, the average Frenchman, like, well, how strongly do you feel we should be a part of NATO? I don't think they'd care that much because they're not on the border with Russia. But, like, Ukraine wants to be a part of NATO, and the desire to be part of NATO shot up after Crimea's annexation. So it seems like the reason they want it is because it makes them feel safe, which it would, because having NATO troops there means Russia couldn't invade without risking the end of the world.
Yeah, Vaush, I understand. I agree. I'm not taking issue with the fact that the population in Ukraine wants membership in NATO now as a deterrent to Russian aggression and invasion. The issue I was taking with your propositions, with your initial argument that I was documenting in your other videos, in your other discussions on this topic, was, number one, that Russia has ambitions to continue expanding westward and eastward in the absence of any kind of NATO deterrence, which, number one, no scholar, and there's no evidence to support that. I'm saying that is not something that has any kind of support, either in the literature or in terms of Putin's actions.
Then why are they doing it?
That Russian invasion, I've named that there's a couple occasions where they've actually done it. And when we compare even the direct military incursions and annexation to U.S. actions, by the way, even in the recent past, Russia comes out favorably.
Wait, you keep out jumping around. We were talking about whether or not NATO, why Ukraine wanted to be part of NATO. You just jumped to like 3 different points in a row there.
No, I never took the position that no country, that the population would not necessarily want to join NATO because they want protection against Russian.
So that's the function that it fills. Countries that are next to Russia that are a part of NATO want to be in NATO because it protects those countries.
In the case of Ukraine, yes. In terms of NATO as an organization wanting to continue expanding within that region, no, that's not the rationale they have. They don't actually want an issue. They don't actually have a motivation to expand for the purpose of furthering protection, military protection from Russian aggression. They have other geopolitical and economic interests.
Yes, of course they do. But of course. But Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Ukraine, what have you, these countries want to be a part of NATO because it protects them. You keep, again, the argument you're responding to right now is one in which I say NATO's only intention is to protect people, and they're very good, and they have no ulterior motives, and they definitely don't participate in furthering Western hegemony. Of course they do. I'm not denying that. I don't really care if the alternative is Russian hegemony, which seems to be worse in this case. Certainly in the context of Eastern Europe. This is the difference, okay? Countries that want NATO there, and NATO arrives, they like NATO being there, okay? Countries that don't want Russia there often end up getting Russia there anyway. So in terms of how NATO is positioned at the border of Russia, Estonia, what have you, possibly Ukraine, you know, how is that bad? Shouldn't they have a right to defend themselves?
They should, in the face of overt Russian aggression and actual evidence that Russian plans, military incursions and naked aggression. If you use those, so just hold on. We should let each other talk a little bit, if you don't mind. Like, I'll let you continue, but if you just give me 15 seconds, that'll be good, and then I'll let you go. So what I'm saying is that the position you seem to be taking initially was that there was something unique about Russian imperialism compared to other models of imperialism. I'm saying that's not the case. Number two, I'm saying there is no evidence that in the absence of NATO, Russia would actually accelerate any type of non-existent plan to nakedly intervene militarily and annex territories to the west of it. And there's no evidence to support that. Even under the scholars who have written the most damning critiques of Putin do not say that's one of his ambitions.
Except Ukraine?
And there's no, and so we went over why it happened in Ukraine. We understand what happened with Viktor Yanukovych, right? Do you understand what was behind that coup and what caused him to fall from a power? It was opportunism.
That's
it was
the
a criminal
point. Wait,
act.
that's the point. Russia creates its opportunistic opportunities by funding secessionist groups, paying for disinfo, producing media, spreading lies. That's what they do. That's what all countries do if they could. Russia's just better at it.
No, I would take serious issue with that. If you look at U.S. intervention in Latin and Central America, this is something that the U.S. has excelled at in that particular region.
We aren't
especially.
annexing our neighbors.
We just went over that. If you're talking about annexation that's taking place in Crimea, annexation didn't actually take place in Georgia or South Ossetia.
I didn't say they annexed everything, only that they do it at all. Putin has said himself he thinks that Ukraine should be part of Russia. You realize taking Ukraine would be like a 400-mile stretch westward, right? It would put them up to Poland. They would be next to Hungary.
So let me ask you something, though. So this goes back to something.
How is that not expansion westward?
If that we're talking about further expansion. You said if NATO didn't exist, they would continue expanding westward. I'm saying there's no evidence to support that's the case, and it's not supported anywhere. Here's what I was asking.
Currently planning to annex one of the world's largest countries is current evidence of that. You can't like talk your way around this. Having hundreds of thousands of troops at the border in an effort to prepare for an invasion of one of the largest countries in Europe, which would move them westward, is plans for them to move westward. You can't argue your way around that. That is a thing that they're doing.
Yes, well, again, this is an empirical issue, and it's an issue about whether or not they actually plan for an outward for a direct invasion.
Putin himself has said that he thinks Ukraine should be part of Russia. What do you need? The leader of the country says that he wants them to be part of them. Stop.
Hold on.
The leader has said, I want this country to be in our borders. They have troops massed on the border. They've been producing and funding agitprop and secessionist sentiment in East Ukraine for years now. They've already annexed a part of Ukraine. You are going to be, it's delusional of you to they've already annexed part of the country. You would never extend this level of charitability to the United States. Christ. This is the issue that I have. So many people, it's just such a clear bias in favor of Russia. You would, and I know this because you're left-leaning, the idea that any person would be left-leaning and go like, oh, America doesn't have intention of, moving westward, they just spent decades and millions of dollars using their intel agencies to fund secessionist groups and also annexed a part of the territory, and also they've explicitly said they feel like it should be part of the country. Come on! Putin said that!
Listen, with the United States, even with their public proclamations, I often will say that what they're actually planning to do differs from, what their actual
Your claim is that Russia does not intend to move westward, but now they're doing everything.
And I said a very specific.
There's no NATO in Ukraine. That's the reason why.
There's also no NATO in the other areas that I actually mentioned.
Where?
There's no NATO. Belarus isn't a part of NATO.
They're already an ally of Russia.
I understand that, but if what you're saying, listen, your position seems to be that
why would they invade an ally?
You seem to say your entire position in your other videos that I listened to was that they don't use a combination, and Belarus is actually.
I have never said annexation is literally the only diplomatic tool they have. Again, you keep responding to arguments that aren't there. They are
videos
unique in that modern countries don't generally annex their adjacent territories. That is true. That is not a thing that happens these days.
I understand, and I'm saying, and what I was saying, if you compare it to other forms of imperialism, for example, the U.S. form of imperialism, as a consequentialist, you should understand that annexation alone, especially when I'm not again excusing it, all right. So I want you to just listen for a second. In terms of the action being criminal and being provocative,
Nuclear
and belligerent,
war.
and yes, there is no. I'm saying if you want to prevent nuclear war, as I do, then what should actually be done is telling NATO or focusing on NATO's encroachment or further expansion within that actual region.
Let's focus on that. Hold on. Why is it Ukraine's responsibility to not have NATO in their country so that they don't engage in brinksmanship when they're invaded by Russia? Please explain. Hold on. Stop. You just put the burden of proof, you just put the potential blame on the countries Russia is invading.
I didn't say that. I said that there should be negotiation. Listen, this is what NATO can do.
Ukraine. So wait, why shouldn't NATO be in Ukraine? Why not?
I'm telling you what should. No, I didn't say that. I'm saying this is what should actually happen.
You just said NATO should stop.
I said stop further encroachment. In terms of Ukraine, this is what should be done, and it's a position taken by academics like Glenn Deason. It was also written about in The Guardian and Vaush, what they can do in negotiations. And I think they could make an effort to actually do this, and it's something that they are looking into. You could say that we can't guarantee that Ukraine won't get membership in NATO. It will be a while into the future, and all analysts who have looked at the situation have said the same thing. Even if Ukraine joins
why can't
NATO,
they do it? Why not now?
It's not going to happen now.
Why not now? What morally wrong would be wrong with allowing them into NATO right now?
Because if you want to actually diffuse the tensions in that particular region,
what tensions? We're only putting defensive.
It's not defense.
I'm sorry. No, stop. Stop. I'm giving you a lot of rope here, okay? But it's time. Okay, listen, all right. It's time for me to start pulling. All right. You are incredibly inconsistent. You have said multiple times now, alternating between they can be in NATO if they want, but also the best way to prevent further brinksmanship is for them to not be in NATO. Because why? Because Russia wants to fuck with them. NATO in Ukraine. You have already said that Ukraine, if it had NATO in it, NATO would not be gearing up for any invasion of Russia. Nobody's going to invade Russia. They have thousands of nuclear weapons. It would be insane. Nobody is going to do this. So NATO's presence in Ukraine, a country which is already more allied with the West than Russia, would not in any way militarily threaten Russia. The only way this could be considered brinksmanship would be if Russia was already set on invading Ukraine and they didn't want to come into combat with NATO troops. So isn't that kind of Russia's fault?
No, I'm telling you what all the analysts are saying right now.
Stop referencing other analysts. Stop referencing people who... Stop. I don't care. Make your arguments. Stop. I don't care.
I'm making my argument, but I usually try to substantiate my argument by looking at
citing people's names is not substantiating. That's an appeal to authority.
No, it's not. I'm not saying it's true in virtue of this. I'm saying you have to substantiate your positions by sometimes relying on what the actual scholarship.
That's not how you substantiate an argument. Just randomly citing a bunch of names and articles that I can't check live is only an appeal to authority. I don't know if you're citing what they're saying correctly. I actually
sent you that article, if you recall, prior to this. I don't know if you actually looked it over, but I'm saying that oftentimes what you base your position on is just your impression of the situation. Because quite frankly, I've watched your content. I enjoy it. I like you in terms of how you debate and how you interact with people, but you don't give the impression of somebody who's actually looked over in detail.
If you have read their articles, then provide their arguments, not their names.
What should be said is that most of them are actually arguing that even if it comes to
why are they saying that? I don't care what they say. Why are they saying it?
It doesn't happen overnight. When a country joins NATO, there's a lot of actual coordination that needs to take place. There's other negotiations that needs to take place. There's certain details that have to be ironed out in terms of the details of military aid, in terms of the type of imports that will actually take place. It's something that doesn't happen.
I thought nothing was happening. Wait, hold on. I thought that all this was a posturing game.
Oh, no, it's not a posture. I never said that. Well, I don't know.
Well, I'm sorry. Wait, chat. Did they not earlier say that Russia wasn't going to invade and that this was just like a posturing thing?
No, I said that Patrick Coburn and other investigative journalists have said
I don't care. what they say. Cite their arguments. Give me the logic. If I were no, you're giving me names.
What do you mean by posturing? What do you mean by posturing? I don't understand. I was responding to that when I said that.
When you are providing an argument, you are more well read on this than I am. It seems you should be able to synthesize the arguments they give rather than simply saying, this is what the experts believe. This is what the experts believe. I don't care what the experts believe. They're all shorter than me. I could beat them in a game of hoops. They can suck my dick for all I care. I want to know why they believe what they believe.
I was starting to tell you, and you cut me off about posturing. So I don't know that's what I was trying to respond to when you did that. So if you just let me, there's all these details that have to be ironed out when a country actually joins NATO. Even if Ukraine was to actually join NATO, and it might happen, but not a single person who's actually involved in the negotiations, not a single statesman says that Ukraine's membership within NATO will happen suddenly. It will take a period of years because that's actually the lead time that has to take place for a country to join NATO, for a country to join a major organization like this. So in terms of the negotiations and what could actually be said to actually deter an invasion, if one is actually going to happen, or to deter or to prevent or to diffuse the prospect of nuclear war, what you can actually say was that we cannot guarantee that Ukraine or any of these other countries will not join NATO at some point in the future. But what we can say is that it's actually going to be quite a ways into the future. And in the meantime, we want you to actually dismantle any plans for aggression. We want you to, as a result, as a response to that type of incentive, to, stop with those type of ambitions and to guarantee a non-invasion or a non-aggressive move in that particular region. And if you actually engage in those type of negotiations, you have a far better chance of diffusing nuclear conflict and military belligerence, which you say you're against, than if you take this other route that we're talking about.
So who do you think is at fault for the potential for nuclear war here?
In terms of
Russia trying to invade a sovereign nation.
They should absolutely not invade a sovereign nation.
No, who's at fault? Wait, who's at fault? I think that Ukraine has a right to join NATO, and Russia doesn't have a right to invade. So the language... So when you say stuff like, the way we can avoid conflict is by preventing NATO's expansion eastward, that suggests to me that you think that NATO's presence is responsible for the position that we're in right now, as opposed to Russia's imperialist intentions.
Oh, since 1998, NATO's attempts at actual ongoing expansion and movements in that particular region, after it repositioned itself as an offensive organization and showed that it's capable of outright aggression against a nation that didn't pose any kind of military threat.
Quit with the clause. What about NATO expansion? What's wrong with it?
I just gave it because it's actually a belligerent response, and it's something that even in the absence of direct military intervention in Russia, there's reasons actually why they would want to oppose that.
Wait. You think Russia doesn't like NATO only because they repositioned this? Wait, hold on. First of all, Russia and the Soviet Union disliked NATO before the Ukrainian bombings. So the idea that it was them repositioning themselves as an aggressive organization which led to them opposing them is ridiculously wrong. And additionally, I don't know what the relationship between I don't know what the relationship is between these things. So where should NATO have stopped? Why can't NATO expand? What's wrong with NATO expansion? In the abstract.
NATO claimed in the abstract, so NATO claimed that they were actually going to stop after the Cold War, the dissolution of the Soviet Union. They initially said they weren't going to continue expanding eastward.
Stop moving to other points. First of all, they never promised that. It's not in the treaty. You're free to read it. Answer the question. What's wrong with NATO? I don't care what diplomats say. Get it in the treaty next time, Gorbachev, the fucking idiot. Listen, what's wrong with NATO expanding into East Europe when the people in those countries want to be a part of NATO?
The reason Russia would oppose NATO encroachment in that
I'm asking you, what is wrong with it morally?
I'm telling you. Because oftentimes what NATO has done, and they did this in the Balkans by balkanizing the former Yugoslavia, is that when NATO actually can encroach on a particular region, even in the absence of outright military intervention, which is not the threat here, in terms of how
is morally wrong with NATO expanding into countries that want... I don't care what Russia thinks. I'm asking you, unless you are the Russian state, in which case that would explain a lot of this convo. What is wrong with them entering countries that want to have NATO in them?
Nothing. If the population actually takes a vote and they actually want to be a member of NATO, I'm saying that's actually on a moral, in the abstract, that's fine. What I am actually saying is that in terms of pragmatics, you asked what could be done. And I said, this is what's actually on the table in terms of negotiations and what could be done to diffuse the military conflict. What I will say is that oftentimes when NATO moves into a particular region, or when you have an expansion, right, of a US economic interest within a particular region in Eastern Europe or in the Balkans or in Latin America, it tends to lead to other forms of imperialism and intervention, which often have detrimental effects on the underlying population.
Hold on. So stop. I was talking about NATO expansion, not whatever it is you were just getting into. I understand US imperialism bad, okay? We're talking about countries that want to join NATO. To my knowledge, when countries want to join NATO and then do join NATO, it's generally fine. That works. Yeah. Like, it's fine. Like, it's not like NATO sets in like the World Bank or the IMF and just like fucks them up or whatever. Usually it's a defensive pact which seeks to secure the geopolitical interests of the West, because it prevents other countries from fucking with them, because anyone exchanging fire with a NATO soldier means potential serious political problems, you know? So given the fact that all that's the case, like, so you say morally there's nothing wrong, okay? So if morally it's not wrong for NATO to expand, and morally it is wrong for Russia to expand, shouldn't the solution to this problem be to get Russia to stop engaging in brinksmanship?
I absolutely agree. In terms of direct, outright invasion, yes. And I've never said anything to the contrary of that. So, I mean, if you want to talk about straw, I've never once, I don't know where you got the impression that I was saying that Russian aggression wasn't criminal, that Russian aggression, annexation,
or intervention. It. Like, oh, it's just an ethnic thing. No. Oh, they're not actually going to invade, you know, no, it's just I'm citing what the actual evidence and the empirics and the scholarship is saying on this particular issue. And you have to, this is something that comes up with a lot of your interactions. You know, you often conflate contextualizing, nuance, and explaining as apologia and justification and apologetics, and I'm saying that's not actually the case. No. Wait, I'm not letting you walk away from that one. Okay, yeah. The framing you've engaged in here has been incredibly biased, and you've wiffle waffled off a ton of these points. This is not just adding contextualization. Okay, saying, for example, that Russia doesn't have plans to expand westward when they currently have hundreds of thousands of troops massed along Ukraine, and that you know, the Georgian invasion was this totally nuanced thing, and it's not actually evidence of Russian imperialism, but the bombing of Yugoslavia means that NATO is actually an aggressive institution that Russia should fear military force from. Your framing here has been pretty deliberate. The downplaying, saying, "Oh, well, he only has the desire to unite ethnic, like, Russian components." Like,
I'm telling you what the scholarship on this
I don't says about that care what they say. You have to make their arguments for them.
I was making it for you, and I was actually
you were just saying it and saying they said it.
I was saying why, and I was using examples. I was saying what you would expect to see in terms of observable implications if your hypothesis, which, you know, has no support anywhere, was actually correct. And
I know you're wrong about this, by the way, because I've talked to other people over email, and you're misrepresenting the evidence. The idea that international relations as an academic field right now is united behind the idea that the Ukraine invasion is just a proposed hoax, and additionally that Russia has no plans for it. Wait, hold on. You are pretending that the entire body of international relations is all like fucking RT writers or gray zone advocates, okay? You absolutely are. Stop, okay? All right, here's my new debate tactic. Actually, I talked to all international relations experts before talking to you, and all of them agree that Russia actually does have traditional, like, geopolitical expansionist metrics, and Ukraine is just the beginning.
I don't know who those people are, but I just cited
all of them. It's all of them. Just pull up a department list.
I just cited somebody initially, if you recall, Chaim Shinar, who was not at all a pro-Russian or pro-Putin advocate, and he pointed out exactly.
They don't have a PhD.
Ambitions. Yeah, they do.
They faked it.
Academics.
It's been faked. Look it up.
All right. Well, Vaush, listen, I generally have enjoyed, listening to this. I know, your tactics are.
You're not answering my goddamn questions.
I'm trying to, but you keep I'm trying to. So listen.
Because you keep answering questions that I don't ask. I ask you something, and then you go talk about another adjacent thing.
I'm talking. I already answered your questions in terms of NATO and in terms of, in the abstract.
Why should Russia fear NATO? Why should Russia fear NATO?
I already explained the reason why, because they actually, since it was repositioned as a defensive,
they disliked NATO before the Yugoslav bombings.
Yeah, prior to that, they viewed it as an expansionary organization. And the more they expand into that particular territory, the more the possibility of opening it up to Western investment at the expense, of Russian economic relations and political relations actually increases. So Russia is a power with geopolitical ambitions, like many other nations. I've never said otherwise.
So,
What I took
so wait,
issue
so
with
wait,
in terms
shouldn't,
of
so
your,
wait, hold on. So that seems like a bitch baby fear. So Russia's
no,
afraid that NATO alignment in adjacent countries might make them more amenable to Western business interests. That's to the benefit of those countries. I don't know how to put this to you, but like
it might be.
Kazakhstan.
No, it's not necessarily to the
Wait,
benefit of
no,
those
wait, hold on.
industries.
Countries
Hold
in
on.
West aligned European countries are generally
Listen,
doing better than Russia aligned European countries. We have a better
West,
economy than
but
they do.
West aligned, certain Western European countries, absolutely. But there's other regions in other parts of the world, which is you should know because
We're
you seem to be
talking
a critic.
about
No, I'm saying
Europe and NATO.
automatically.
What other part of the
No,
world is
Eastern.
NATO going to move into? What, Turkey?
Listen, I'm saying that. No, I'm saying. Well, Turkey is part of NATO.
I know,
I'm
they
saying
already did that. Where else? What, Syria?
And I'm saying that when they do that, it doesn't automatically follow that greater exposure to Western economic interests.
We
or
weren't
Western
talking
capitals.
about
That's
the...
what we were.
No, we were not
That's what I was
talking.
talking
We
about.
are exclusively talking about countries NATO might occupy. This is what I mean. This is why you keep getting interrupted. I ask you, like, isn't it normal and natural for countries to want to be a part of NATO if that means they would be open to better business relations with the West, which is wealthier than Russia? And your answer is, well, take a look at, like, Laos. Take a look at, like, Cambodia. See, not every country aligned with the West economically is doing well. Well, we weren't talking about that. We were talking about countries NATO could be a part of.
Even NATO, even countries that are part of NATO, I'm saying the reason Russia as a geopolitical power would want to oppose that or generally would be wary of that is because ongoing increased flows of Western investment or Western
So that
trade
has
in those
nothing to
particular
do
regions.
with NATO being an aggressive organization. They're a
No,
defense...
the prospect of using some type of military intervention
Against
in
who?
regions, not against Russia, in areas surrounding it, or promoting or actually supporting secessionist movements in those particular regions to overthrow governments, is something that actually increases as NATO potentially expands its influence in that particular region. And Putin,
but Russia's already doing that. They just don't want their secessionists to fight our secessionists.
But so the West is already doing that as well. In fact,
Where?
the overthrow of in Ukraine, the overthrow of Yanukovych by the Ukrainian parliament was, largely supported by Western military forces.
Wait, do you think that's even remotely comparable to what Russia's doing in East Ukraine?
I'm saying that right now, you mean? No, I'm saying that the Russian invasion or the gearing up to invade, right? And I was actually, by the way, I just want to make it clear, I was not citing scholarship when I said the Russian potential invasion is a hoax. I was citing Patrick Coburn, who's an investigative journalist, who said he has spoken to Ukrainian generals.
That's great. Yes, you said thank you. Yes. Thank you for the other name. I appreciate it. Okay.
Oh my God.
So wait,
Vaush.
Russia currently funds secessionist groups and their neighbors. What secessionist groups are we funding? Where are we doing this?
Oh, the overthrow of Yanukovych? I don't know if you read that paper that I actually sent you an email. Did you take a look at it? It goes through the actual in private email.
Wait, is this a thing currently happening?
No, it happened in terms of the initial overthrow of the government in Ukraine.
Okay, and how did that happen? Did they do what Russia's doing, where they fund tens of thousands of insurgents with military armaments and use it to destabilize an area the size of, like, Poland, basically? Is that what we're talking about?
They were supporting, absolutely, secessionist movements in Ukraine, or elements who wanted to overthrow the government because they wanted alignment with the European Union, and because the negotiations for that had actually broken down because of Viktor Yanukovych.
I would need to look more into this. I just have a feeling you're severely misrepresenting it because you have like every other thing that we've talked about. So
no, I actually look at.
I'll take the L on this one just because I need to read like more into it. But I have a strong feeling.
Maybe you should actually read up on the literature and the scholarship
on literally all history before talking to you. Yes. No, that would have been a good debate tactic.
On the scholarship on this particular point.
What particular? I'm not talking about Yanukovych. I'm talking about Ukraine.
Yeah, we were talking. The debate was supposed to be on Ukraine. I sent you an article. You haven't looked into any of the literature and scholarship. When I bring it up, you like to dismiss it.
So wait, this is what I mean by an appeal to authority. You didn't read the one article you emailed me, therefore you haven't engaged with any of the literature. This, alongside your posturing, your constant attempts to frame the entire field of foreign relations. Wait, stop. You have failed.
That's not an appeal to authority, my friend.
When you only cite names and you don't give the arguments behind them, when you're so so concerned a dozen times in this conversation with saying, well, here's what everyone here thinks, and here's what everyone here thinks, without actually giving the arguments why. This isn't theoretical physics, you know. It's not as though I'm incapable of understanding the terminology that you would apply. The names are brought up as a way of enforcing a perceived hegemony of opinion. But so far, every time you would express a point here while talking to me, they seem pretty easy to tear into. So this gives me the impression that you're misrepresenting other people or being selective.
Absolutely not. And in fact, it's an appeal to evidence, not an appeal to authority. You're conflating
citing names is an evidence. Wait, you realize citing names. Wait, the scientific method for citing the names of people who you think agree with you?
I cited the name. I cited the article I sent you. Then I started to go into the actual argument being made in that article, which you then just missed because you said you haven't looked into it.
Wait, hold on. The only thing I've said that to is the Yanukovych thing with Ukraine back in 2010 or whatever. With regards to all the other instances where you've brought up other articles or other people or whatever, at no point have I said, oh, I can't engage with that because I haven't read the article. I've engaged with the points that you've listed, and so far it seems like, and I guess I'll have to appeal to like public opinion on this one, but it feels like most you were doing was saying the names. Like it wasn't about the argument, it was about getting to say the names of the people who you say.
If that happened, it's because I was usually interrupted mid-sentence after I just said the names, but it's not actually that I was just referring to the names and then stopping, you know, what my position happened to be or what the evidence happens to be on that actual point. But
so are we talking about the Euromaidan? That is the thing we're referring to, the Euro Square, the wave of demonstrations and civil unrest in Ukraine, which began on the night of the 21st of November 2013, with public protests in Maidan Nezalezhnosti in Kiev. Is this what we're referring to here?
Those were the protests, that initially started after he withdrew from negotiations with the European Union or the Economic Association of the European Union. Yanukovych, his car was then actually shot at, and there's evidence that the United States was supporting the right sector in Ukraine at the time that the government, he fled to Moscow because Parliament deposed his government without actually following the normal procedures that are used when that process is put in motion. So I'm saying you're talking about Russia stoking secessionist tendencies, stoking conflict in the region. The West and the United States was doing that as well. And Yanukovych, when he actually made this decision to instead join the Eurasian Economic Union as opposed to the Economic Union, the Economic Association of the European Union, he was a democratically elected government, and he was elected according to international observers in a very fair fashion.
I'm so confident that you're just just straight-facedly lying to me right now. I need to look
maybe you should read the peer-reviewed articles I sent you before saying that.
Oh my. It's so obvious that the posturing of education is the only framework by which you're comfortable in your arguments here. Well, I can, if you want, you can sit here and I will read the whole wiki article and then I will read the thing that you sent me so that I have some base of info. It's only like 10,000.
Before the debate, Vaush. You think maybe that would have been.
We're talking about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Why would I read the whole Wikipedia article in a peer-reviewed historical?
I said the peer-reviewed article. I'm not talking about Wikipedia.
Well, you should also read a Wikipedia article on something, right? Gives you a good basis of information.
Sure. Yeah, they can be useful. Absolutely.
All right. So it seems like you're a little afraid of being found out here. Like maybe it's not fair to compare Russia literally just directly funding full-on militias of tens of thousands of people to what I'm going to assume is an instance of the West kind of backing protests against a leader who they didn't like.
They backed the right sector, a group of neo-fascists and open anti-Semites, as is documented in that piece. These are not savory characters the West was supporting in Ukraine.
Wait, again, you did it again. Did I say savory characters?
No,
did I even imply that?
Yes, the implication was that they're not doing what Russia is doing in terms of stoking secessionist.
Do you have any idea? Wait, hold on. Let me just get your, hold on. Do you think what's happening right now with what Russia's doing in East Ukraine is comparable to what happened then?
In terms of U.S. support for white supremacists and neo-Nazis in Ukraine?
What? No, in terms of a government funding and providing arms to militia groups to destabilize and occupy portions of territory in a sovereign country.
That's what the United States did in Ukraine. They did it with the other
parts of Ukraine had militias where they essentially took over parts of the country.
The government was overthrown. The Yanukovych government, Yanukovych was overthrown.
Sorry. Did they or did they not try to take over parts of the country? Or is this just so you say an overthrow of the government? So that can happen in a lot of forms. Sometimes government overthrows are a good thing. I don't know if this is the case here.
Not in
but
this case. Do you think it was a good thing in this case?
I didn't say. I get once again, my friend. I said I don't know. I literally just said I don't know. So
Okay, but
the
if you
problem that
want-
I have is you're comparing apples to oranges, where Russia is essentially all but invading East Ukraine by funding essentially paramilitary groups over there. And this is being compared to, and you're not being very specific too. You're like, overthrow of government. Okay, so like, so what does that mean exactly? Like, were there protests? Were there militias? Were there bombings? Which side had an air force? Like, I need to know this information to compare these two.
The right sector, the protesters being supported by the West stormed government buildings. They used bombs. They actually attempted to bomb and shoot at Yanukovych's car. That's why he fled to Moscow. The right sector, which is a group filled with open anti-Semites and neo-fascists and neo-Nazis,
Yeah,
was
the right tends to be like that. Yeah.
Yes, okay. It was being supported openly by the United States and by Western governments at this time. And so absolutely, in this particular case, they were supporting not just protesters against the government of Yanukovych, who was democratically elected. They were also backing movements, violent movements that were attempting to overthrow the government, which is why he fled. It was at that point.
So how did we help them?
By supplying arms, by stoking, their general. The European Union came out with public pronouncements saying that they were supporting the protesters and the organizations that were protesting against the Yanukovych government, and they never condemned even the violent protests that took place. Now, you compare that to what was taking place in Armenia 6 years later. It's very clear that the United States was actually supporting, and the Western governments were supporting, violent elements in that particular country. So it wasn't just a case.
So I don't really care about the denouncements. Like, that's pretty light shit compared to what we're talking about here. So I want to hear about the funding military groups. That's what I'm interested in. So was this a democratically elected leader, this Viktor Yanukovych?
Yes, he was. At the time that he was elected, right? International monitors have actually said it was generally a fair election.
Okay, so I like democracy. That seems cool.
Okay.
I think that's great. So you said we funded arms. Which institution did this? Did NATO do this? Was it the United Kingdom, France, what framework was this done?
It was evidence that the United States government or the military was actually supplying arms to those particular sectors or those particular elements in the Ukraine at the time.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
So let me see. Viktor Yanukovych, second round, percentage of total national vote. It seems like, from what I'm looking at here, based on the percentages of people who voted in favor of him, that this is a candidate, given the fact also that he would have moved to Russia afterwards. This was kind of a Russian-aligned candidate. This is the feeling that I'm getting here.
He was in negotiations with both the European Union to join the economic associations and with Putin at that same time to join the Eurasian Economic Union, which is essentially Putin's economic zone outside of the European Union. He made a decision to scuttle the negotiations with the European Union and reject membership within the economic association, and he instead declared that they were going to be joining the Eurasian Economic Zone. It was at that point that these protests started and the United States began arming some of these unsavory neo-fascist organizations in Ukraine. Now, you may disagree with the fact that he denounced or that he announced that he was not going to join the EU and the Economic Association and chose to instead, join the Eurasian Economic Union. But keep in mind, this was a democratically elected government. Maybe the population disagreed with that, right? They could have voted him out in the next election. But what I'm saying is that there is nothing leading up to this chain of events that paints, the West in a benevolent role and paints Russia as being the sole aggressor.
I don't know why. I have at no point attempted to frame us as the benevolent people in this exchange or Russia as the bad guys, because you are the one who brought this particular thing up.
That's what you were saying in your other videos. That's why, if you recall,
with regards to the protests against Yanukovych, I don't believe I brought that up.
No, in general, you were saying that Russian actions or Russian imperialism is generally more dangerous or detrimental than U.S. imperialism.
Well, considering Russia keeps threatening nuclear war and we don't, then yeah, I'd continue to believe it.
This was another. The United States has threatened it in more overt ways in the past, even in the recent past, in terms of the the invasion of Iraq, where they called generals and said, "You use special weapons on us, we'll use special weapons." Quote.
No, wait, no, wait. Hold on. This is categorically incomparable to Russia engaging in brinksmanship with NATO allies in a manner which would bring about literally the nuclear conflict that we spent the entire Cold War barely evading. This is the idea that you would even attempt to compare the chest-puffing posturing of a U.S. general who hadn't tasted war besides the Gulf when going into Iraq to avenge the fucking idea that people who died in 9/11 were there. The idea that you would compare that to Russia building back the fucking Iron Curtain borders and posturing along those lines is ridiculous to me. The level of comparable threat there is unimaginably different.
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah, sure. I'm saying Russian aggression in that region is not something that's good. NATO expansion is beyond a certain point is not something that should be promoted if you want to diffuse the potential for nuclear warfare. And I'm saying
Russian
the
expansionism.
Sure, yeah, and I'm saying the events in the Ukraine show, the detrimental impact of U.S. and Western intervention in that particular region. Because what happened here was interference with a democratically elected government. Not that should be news for anybody who actually follows U.S. foreign policy, but the entire premise you had that it was Russian intervention or Russian aggression that's uniquely detrimental or uniquely dangerous is something I absolutely
right now, where does Ukraine want to side?
Even so, pardon?
Right now, yeah, Ukraine wants to side with us, and Russia is engaging in annexation while threatening nuclear war. So, yeah.
I'm looking at the roots of the conflict, but absolutely.
The roots of the conflict is that Russia keeps wanting to bully its fucking neighbors. That's the root of the conflict.
Listen, that's partially true, and it's partially an oversimplification.
You agree
of a much more
that these
issue.
countries have a right to have NATO.
I did say that, and I also said that the United States should not be backing, the overthrow of democratically elected governments, which was clearly the case in the Ukraine, and this is why, the Russia has.
But I wasn't but again, that's another.
Expansionism.
That's another case of you responding to a point that I never made. At no point have I defended this. You brought this up. I never talked. You brought this whole thing. So you're like, well, I'm just here to push back against the idea that America was doing the right thing during the, Yakunovich thing. Well, I didn't bring that up.
I'm here to push back against your claim that Russian interventionism or Russian aggression in that region is uniquely dangerous or uniquely
did we annex them?
The U.S., if you look at the actions the U.S. has taken around the globe, even in the recent past.
No, I didn't say around the globe. Why is it annex Ukraine?
No, annexation, as I already pointed out, isn't necessarily the metric that I would look at to see whether.
What about annexation when it brings you up against the borders of countries that have nuclear weapons?
Russia's annexation?
Yes, Russia is the one who's engaging in brinksmanship right now.
Yes, okay, and I'm saying the situation in Ukraine is far more complicated than you're making it out to be, as we just went over. I'm saying I'm opposed to Russian annexation in the totality. I'm saying there is no evidence anywhere, number one, that Russia would continue expanding westward in the absence of NATO.
What evidence would you need?
I just gave you the observable implications of
what evidence would you need?
I'd look to see, first of all, that Russia has actually tried to annex or invade other countries where, in fact, there would be less of a deterrence if they did so than the Ukraine. And you would expect to see them moving in those regions initially. Where
would have less of a deterrence?
Armenia is absolutely one example.
Okay, maybe Ukraine has natural gas and soil and access to the Black Sea. That's more strategically useful to Russia.
Kazakhstan and Belarus have more natural gas.
They're allies of Russia.
And I'm saying that.
No. You can't pretend. Wait, hold on. You can't pretend to have a PhD in the subject when you're making claims like this. You keep doing this. Well, why haven't they annexed all their neighboring territory, including their allies? Why don't they expend hundreds of thousands of lives and hundreds of millions of dollars killing people in order to conquer territory they already have almost exclusive political control over? I don't know. Maybe they found another way.
Please don't question my credentials when you had a wiki open when I gave you a peer-reviewed article, okay?
I haven't looked at the peer-reviewed article. Exactly. Also, by the way, behaving the way you're behaving right now is what makes me question them, because this is what pseudo-intellectuals do, not people with actual... If you were confident in your knowledge, you would be able to make these arguments rather than just sneering at me for not knowing your field.
I'm making the arguments. You didn't know anything about the history of Ukraine. And
we weren't talking about this element of Ukraine. We were talking about everything else. You compared the invasion of Georgia to the bombing of Yugoslavia and then acted as though it wasn't the ethnic cleansing that led to the majority of the harm that was going forth there. You're saying right now Russia doesn't intend to expand westward, and the reason why you know is because they haven't invaded Belarus, which they're already allies with, before invading Ukraine. Come on, dude.
there were disagreements between Belarus and Russia that actually exceeded and were far more serious than the disagreements
They
that
are
emerged between.
allies. Why would they invade an
I
ally?
mean, no, I'm saying, listen to me, listen. I'm saying there were actual disagreements between the president of Belarus and Putin that actually exceeded any of the disagreements taking place between Yanukovych and Putin, and between Yanukovych and the Economic Union, or the European Union and the Economic Association.
I
So
don't.
I'm saying
I don't
it wasn't
care.
just.
What
But
does
this
that
is
have to do with
why
anything
it's-
we're talking about?
Because if you're saying that Russia is willing to invade whenever there's a disagreement or whenever one of their neighbors doesn't do
No,
something that's
they
actually,
invade when it's in their geopolitical interests, like Ukraine, a territory with ripe natural resources, geopolitical access, and a population that's been destabilized by a decade of post-annexation destabilization.
Let me ask you this. So then when Belarus actually decided to diversify their purchases away from Russian crude and go to Europe and the United States, and there was ongoing tense negotiations between Putin and the president of Belarus, and it broke down. According to your model, why didn't Putin invade?
Do you think Americans? Do you think America is an? Do you think America is an imperialist country?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, then why didn't we invade Germany when they didn't allow us to buy all of their steel at $0 per pound?
No, but I'm not saying that an imperialist country actually always will invade or annex or actually use.
Well, that's great. Neither am I. It's almost like there's a complex series of factors which determines whether or not it's geopolitically advantageous.
And I'm saying that what you would expect to see based on the factors you've listed in terms of why they invaded Ukraine, you would expect to see that in the case of Belarus.
No, nobody in my audience is saying like, well, why didn't they invade Belarus? Nobody here has derived that conclusion from the premises that I've laid out.
I'm not interested in your audience. I'm saying
that nobody thinks that. You keep assigning that to me because it's way easier than responding to points I actually have.
No,
you've done this like a dozen times, man. Well, then why don't they invade Kazakhstan? Well, then why haven't they invaded Belarus? Then why didn't they just annex Georgia? Listen, it's not fucking EU4. This isn't Civilization 6 or something, okay? They do what they can do, and there are incredibly complicated variables which determine what they're able to do. Putin has invested millions of dollars, hundreds of millions, in destabilizing Ukraine and preparing them for invasion. This isn't some errant fuck about. No, this isn't some errant fuck about. He has wanted Ukraine. He has said, Putin has said and has been saying for years that Ukraine is a part of Russia. They call it the Ukraine. Why are you talking about the United States? Is this a disease? Are you incapable? Are you like an albino who flees from the point like they flee from the sun? Why? No, Ukraine. You listen, Ukraine. They have funded secessionist groups.
I'm just saying that
they have brought troops to the border. Putin has said Ukraine is a part of Russia. They want to take Ukraine.
First of all, it's actually the case. The facts you're reciting, right, are not necessarily trustworthy because you rely on wiki pages, right? So that's the first thing. That's the first thing. I'm just saying in general.
What facts? Wait, what facts? Wait, what facts did I just bring up that are Western propaganda or whatever?
No, I didn't say they're Western propaganda. I'm saying
then where's the disinfo coming from?
Because I sent you a peer-reviewed.
Oh my God, we're not talking about Yanukovych. We're talking about Russia, Ukraine now.
That's all part of the Russian movement.
What about what I just said is incorrect? What about what I just said is incorrect?
But I disagree with you in general. Is this idea that number one, in the absence of NATO, Russia
No, stop. What did I say that was incorrect? You just alluded to the article you sent me on a separate event while talking about a different. You can't focus on the topic. You're incapable.
No, listen to me. Listen.
Russia, Ukraine. Well, Russia, Ukraine. What did I get incorrect? On that, you can't move to another thing. What there?
Russia, Ukraine. I'm saying it's not just as simple as stating Russia has destabilized Ukraine. I'm saying Western intervention, U.S. intervention. That's what I'm saying is the issue. That's what actually needs to be focused on. So the idea that it's
hold on. Well, okay, listen. The people of Ukraine are currently focusing on Russian invasion, not about like U.S. interventionism in a protest from a decade ago.
Sure.
So let's listen to Ukrainian people. Let's listen to the Ukrainians, okay? And let's talk about what they care about right now, as evidenced by polling, all right? Let's talk about not the fact that America is bad, which I know and agree with, or the fact that Western imperialism has a history in every country on Earth, which I know and nobody has argued against, okay? We are talking just about Russia's proposed invasion of Ukraine. So in that respect, you said I got something wrong. My evidence isn't trustworthy. My arguments are flawed in some way.
No, I was referring to the general, your reading of the history.
I see the general history. I see. What on what? The Ottoman Empire, perhaps the Macedonian generals. What how many degrees of separation are we to run this time before we find a talking point you want to talk about?
A very recent history of Ukraine, which is actually leading up to this entire conflict.
So you just want to talk about this incident right here? Okay, fine. Then give me a couple of minutes. I'm going to speed read this, and I'll find out why you're lying to me about this.
No, I'm not.
Just give me a few minutes. You can talk to chat. You can talk to chat, okay? They can all hear you. I won't mute you or anything like that. I'm just going to read this, okay? You seem, because you don't want to talk about anything else. You know, you want to talk about...
talk about other things. I've agreed that Russia shouldn't invade.
You clearly don't want to talk about anything other than the one thing that you've realized I don't know everything about.
No, that's not. Give me something else you want to talk about and see where we disagree.
How about the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
How many times do I have to say that I'm opposed to the Russian potential invasion of Ukraine?
But then,
and that
so being opposed to it isn't sufficient to me. Being opposed to it isn't sufficient. Okay? You're saying that they would have no intentions of engaging in any further expansion if NATO were to be pulled back. I have no idea how you can arrive at that conclusion.
If the government, if Yanukovych hadn't been overthrown, which was the Democratic...
No, you just said you wanted to talk about another thing, and the first words out of your mouth were the government of Yanukovych. I get the context. What? You were like, hey, listen, man, we can talk about anything else, okay? And I'm like, all right, what about this? And you're like, Yanukovych. Fuck! Talk to chat. Talk to chat. Give me a minute, okay? I need to become an expert on Yanukovych now, all right? Oh, my God.
Vaush, listen to me. I'm saying that this current situation wouldn't exist if it wasn't for those pre-existing chain of events. That's what I was pointing out.
Well, you know, if Alexander the Great didn't storm all the way down across the Mediterranean,
and I'm
a lot of
saying
things
that in the absence of that chain of events, there is no evidence that Russia would want to continue expanding westward
in an alternate history. Shut up. Talk to chat. I'm reading. Jesus. You see, if only a different set of things. I don't care. If only we had time travel technology. We could go back to 10 years ago and change. Here, hold on. It's good. Violence escalated after the 16th of January when Yanukovych signed the Bondarenko-Olenek laws, also known as the anti-protest laws. Yikes. Also known as the dictatorship laws.
What are you reading exactly?
It's about this guy called Yanukovych. Have you heard of him?
What article are you reading? You're not reading you're reading something else. Right?
Yeah, you're right. I like to read Wikipedia articles on subjects before getting a more specific basis of information. Because oftentimes, specific academic articles only talk about a very narrow slice of a broader subject, and getting a general understanding of the broader subject is really useful before learning more specific stuff. So, wait, did he not pass the Bondarenko-Olenek laws?
I don't have this open. Hold on.
If only you'd done your due diligence.
I don't read Wikipedia as due diligence.
Is this a Wikipedia exclusive? Is this not covered elsewhere? Is it like an Xbox exclusive? It doesn't.
I cited more scholarly sources. You want to go to Wikipedia?
Buddy, if you're in scholarly academic articles, then you should know what Wikipedia covers, shouldn't you? Like this should be like the basic stuff. Like this would be like getting mad at me for looking up using a calculator to do arithmetic and mocking me for doing it because it's not like calculus. Like you should know if you do math.
Yeah. If students have actually cited Wikipedia in one of the essays,
it's not about citing Wikipedia. You cite the sources listed at the bottom of Wikipedia. You're admitting right now that you're talking with great confidence and you don't know the basic history of this.
I don't look at Wikipedia when I want to do research.
I'm sorry. Once more, do you think this info exists outside of Wikipedia? Do you think this is like a Wikipedia exclusive? Do you think that? Answer that for me.
No, I would have to go to the sources, but you're not doing that. You're just reading Wikipedia.
Okay, so wait, hold on. I want a definitive answer from you, okay? Did the anti-protest laws in Ukraine, do you think this is a real thing that happened, or it's like something that Wikipedia made up?
Oh, I'm sure it happened.
Oh, okay. Well, then, I'm just looking into it. It seems a little sussy-wussy.
All right.
Western nations have criticized laws of the undemocratic nature and their ability to significantly curb the right to protest, free speech, and the activity of non-governmental organizations, claimed as draconian. Well, this looks pretty fucking bad. Provisions. Criminalizing extremist activity, simplifying the process of removing parliamentary immunity, extending and applying amnesty to those who commit crimes against protesters. Ooh. Allowing trial in absentia of individuals, so try them when they're not even present at the court. Great. Simplifying procedures for administrative protocols, penalty for blocking access to residential buildings of up to 6 years, not even hospital buildings, residential buildings. Holy shit. Drivers of motorcades of more than 5 cars, if they cause traffic jams, face the loss of their driver's license and vehicle for up to 2 years. Oh, oh my god. Okay, these laws are wild. Holy shit. Jeez. Christ. Okay, well, alright, hold on. Verkhovna Rada lawmakers repealed 9 of the 12 restrictive laws by a show of hands without debate. So they repealed the laws that he signed, or at least some of them. Outrage ensued at the limit the laws posed on freedom of speech. In a striking concession aimed at diffusing civil uprising, President Yanukovych offered to install opposition leaders in top posts, but they swiftly rebuffed the offer to the delight of thousands. So it seems like the protesters here were met with some pretty extreme authoritarian measures from the government in a way that can't really be blamed by the West, or like can't really be blamed on the West. Ukraine appeared to be on the brink of civil war. 28 protesters have been killed, including 7 policemen and a civilian bystander. 335 injured. Reports of corruption and cronyism. Eastern European politician. No surprise here. Yanukovych, whatever, fled the largest state. Over here. He was extremely wealthy. A private zoo, a fleet of cars, and a large boat. Okay, pretty standard post-Soviet stuff. Accusations of police abuse and vote rigging. Cool. Yanukovych had been accused by Amnesty International of using the Berkut to threaten attack and torture Ukrainian protesters. Well, this all makes the president here seem pretty fucking bad. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, sure. He was corrupt. I'm not. Yeah.
Okay, so let me take a look. So like Western backed. No, this is a different thing. Okay, hold on. All right. Well, I guess I'll take a look at your article here. Hold on.
Okay.
Gmail. Sent. Nope. Okay, here we go. I found your email chain. Article on international security. Okay, open with Google Docs. Please work. Okay, here we go. There we go. All right, chat. Today, we're going to be academics. We seem to have absolutely gutted the formatting. And also, this is 43 pages. Do we have a conclusion section?
You can skip to the conclusion, but it's more about U.S. A lot of the article is also about U.S. general imperialism in other parts of the world. So
let me see.
It won't just be on Ukraine and Russia. I think you would like it if you actually read it.
No, I'm illiterate. I hate reading. Hey now. Extraordinary claims. Carl Sagan famously insists to require extraordinary evidence. The claim that spreading democracy has been the central mission of the U.S. foreign policy is an extraordinary claim. Okay, I've never believed that spreading democracy has been a claim of U.S. foreign policy. Yet the evidence adduced to support by its defenders is not only extraordinary, but does not meet even the more modest standard. The evidentiary backbone of the narrative designed to corroborate the claim consists of cases where the U.S. and major European democracies have supported democratic forces elsewhere. As I have argued, however, in all these cases, such support simultaneously furthered interests that had nothing to do with democracy. Okay, so this looks like it's about a number of things. If I read the specific section on the Yanukovych thing, and the only thing that it says is actually U.S. or Western involvement here was to their own benefit and not because we're super duper nice and charitable, I'm going to flip my shit. I hope you know that. Given that I have never at any point believed that the United States lifts a finger for anything other than self-interest. Let me see. Okay, so the conclusion here... Okay, hold on. The consensus, however, is undermined by current evidence of an additional motive for supporting the Ukrainian movement, curtailing Russian influence in Ukraine. The relevance of... Oh, God, this is opposed to us having influence in Ukraine now. This is in okay, hold on. Such a case did exist. Only a few years prior to the Ukrainian events, a mass movement had challenged the corrupt and autocratic
Vaush, if I may,
government.
I may just, if we try to find, I'm hoping we can find some common ground here, because I probably have
Oh, no,
half an hour
no,
for-
no. Hold on. Wait, no, hold on. Don't bid for peace now. Don't bid for
No,
peace now, my friend.
So if you're going to read the whole paper while I'm just asking, so look, no, hold on. Let's just see if we can, because you said, when I said I oppose the Russian potential invasion, right? You said that's not enough. So why don't we just explore that a little bit? Like, what would you want my position to be to say that's reasonable? Trying to.
I'll let you know soon, okay? Wait, how do you... Yanukovych here. Yanu. Okay, here we go. Okay, oh, it's right at the beginning. I love it when things are nice and easy like that.
But it continues for 15 pages.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, hold on. Let me just activate Giga mode, okay? 1 second, I've got this. Credit crisis. United States was in solidarity with the protesters immediately. Western governments put coordinated pressure on Ukraine. Democratic removal. Particularly realists criticize the action of Western governments. Clearly provoked Russia and their behavior by political delusions. Mass movement for Armenia. Response. Okay, so that's the introduction. But the second part here. Okay, we got this. Here we go. Armenian movements. Here we go. Western media expect to cover these events in Ukraine. LexisNexis for editorials Ukraine. Pulled Ukraine out of negotiations with the EU. Search for Armenia. One of those up, but live on pair. We don't care about Armenia here, not here at least. Sorry, Moscow backed oligarchs for general request. Senator John McCain was just cause. Okay. Western government support for the protesters was not conned to visit shortly after the protester violence. U.S. Secretary of State told John Kerry at the audience conference in New York that nowhere is the right, I assume, for a democratic European future more important today than Ukraine. You better stand with the parents of the people. The context implies they include a warning against escalation. So it's nudge Yanukovych towards concessions. Polish Foreign Minister Yaroslaw dispatched to the EU with his winter solidarity process. He's more state of condemnation. Issued Barack Obama, Ukrainian authorities. The West made no comparable displays of authority to Armenia. Yes, we act in our own interest, blah, blah, blah. The West posture went beyond turning a blind eye to the crackdown resolution adopted by the PACE, and the crackdown, for example, stated the events of March 1. Waiting for them to get to the point where we're arming them. Let me see. Liberal hypotheses about the variation of the West reactions. Okay, so we cared more about Ukraine than Armenia because obviously we stand to benefit more from denying Ukraine Russian influence than Armenia. Okay, because obviously Ukraine's in Europe and Armenia's not. Okay, oh, that's a debate tactic. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay, wait. At what part in this article do they talk about... Hold on. Gotta stop stroking my beard. Dismiss the idea there was a struggle between democracy and authoritarianism in Armenia. Okay, this is Armenia. Hold on. See, it's you seem to be having some microphone bzz noises.
Sorry.
Are you perhaps shaving?
Nope. It's just
Okay,
it might be the heating system.
I'm almost here. I can feel it. I can feel the crescendo. The music is building. It is undeniable, however, that the movement included a substantial and influential component of illiberal forces. Thus, in the same article cited earlier, the Ukrainian opposition includes far-right nationalist groups like Right Sector, an extremist movement in Svobodia, an anti-Semitic group. Okay, so obviously in any protests against a corrupt government that's aligned with Putin, some of those groups are going to be like far-right nationalist groups that hate Russia because they're Nazis or whatever. There are plenty of people who are on the right side of history in terms of the people they oppose and on the wrong side of history in terms of the people they support. But like I need to know, like, where are we arming these people? Is this going to be like one of those fucking Azov rebellion type shit where we give arms to Ukraine's government and then like some of them end up in the hands of a Nazi group and then it's like the US is funding Nazis?
Yeah, it's like, well, no, the U.S. is just generally giving arms to Kiev and to Ukraine. A large section of the elements that make up the opposition, it can't be reduced to it, but make up, unsavory characters, the rights, and the overthrow of the government itself was illegal, is what I was pointing out, and the article points to that as well. And in fact, everything on it points to
hold on. First of all, that would mean that any support given to the people at all would have the potential for those arms to fall into the hands of far-right groups. And second of all, given the fact that the government had at this point called for the gunning down of protesters, I feel like they were well within their right to engage in an overthrow of the government. You say illegal, sure, but if this reached the point where they were trying people without their presence in court, or they were detaining people or taking away their cars and their licenses because they formed a motorcade of more than 5 people, and they were gunning down protesters, at this point, I feel like the people of Ukraine, whether or not there's a small minority of them that are also super fucking far-right Nazi types, probably have a right to, like, storm the Capitol building. That's like a pretty legitimate justification.
The information you got on the actions of Yanukovych, I'd have to look at how it was substantiated, because I haven't actually had the chance to look at some of that stuff and the sources they actually cited. So I'd want to take a look at that. In terms of actually the election of Yanukovych and the fact that he was democratically elected and then the parliament followed illegal procedures to actually oust him from power. If you have to recall, he fled to Moscow because of the violence directed against him, and all of this.
Wait, hold on. Wait, what's wrong with overthrowing an autocrat?
He wasn't an autocrat. I'm saying
he was gunning down. Wait, he was. Did you read about the laws that he passed? This was like full on like 1984 shit.
I have to look at that, Vaush. You just actually read a Wikipedia, and I have to substantiate that by
compared Russia funding tens of thousands of paramilitary groups that had essentially controlled a secessionist bloc of East Ukraine to the West potentially providing arms to the entire group of protesters that were against an autocratic government, because some of them might lead to the far right.
Listen, I'm talking about the violence that was initiated by the security forces. If this actually happened, I'd have to look at the substantiation.
Wait! You can't pretend that you know more about this than me. If you're like, well, I don't know about these laws he passed in response to the protests. I don't know if he killed anybody. Wait, how you were like, maybe you should do your due diligence.
Gosh, I'm saying that security forces often resort to these type of actions, even in democratic nations. Have you heard of the Marikana massacre in South Africa?
The president tried to pass a bunch of laws that were like fucking Nazi Germany to your crazy authoritarian shit.
As happened in South Africa after the 2014 Marikana massacre.
Oh my God, it's always a whataboutism with you.
It's not whataboutism. What you're doing is whataboutism.
It literally is.
Listen, no, it's not. I'm not saying that because it happened here, therefore we should ignore what's happening here. I'm saying the fact that the government often
police deployed snipers and used live ammunition in a menace.
Violently does not mean that the overthrow of the government then, right, is something that should, especially when it was done or initiated often with the participation of far-right neo-fascist and anti-Semitic
hold on. I'm sorry. Wait, an opposition to a dictatorial government doesn't suddenly become invalid because far-right people are on your side.
Calling it dictatorial is the fact that security forces engaged in unsavory and violent
about the laws that he passed.
I'm saying those type of laws were also passed in other places. It doesn't automatically make a government dictatorial.
Jesus Christ! You're a leftist?
The United States, yes, the United States has done that as well.
Okay, sure. Well, how about we go over these laws and you can tell me when you would be comfortable supporting an overthrow of a government that tried to engage in these law passages. Okay, I feel like, oh my God. Hold on. Okay, 1 second. Let me find the fucking thing. Where did I find that one? Anti-protest laws in Ukraine, aka known as dictatorship laws. Okay, so criminalizing extremist activity, which was defined incredibly broadly. That's something a lot of governments would pass, I guess. Yeah. Simplifying the process of removing parliamentary immunity during criminal proceedings to a majority vote in the parliament. A prior review is no longer required. Again, that seems like a fairly standard thing governments would pass during times of crisis.
I'm not saying these are good. I'm saying it doesn't automatically render a democratic government authoritarian any more than COINTELPRO didn't automatically.
Okay, wait. When do you have these are COINTELPRO is not the same as fucking 1984ing your entire population. What do you think would justify like a legitimate attempt to overthrow like a leader?
I have to take. What's the Wikipedia page you're looking at? Is it Wikipedia Ukraine protests?
Anti-protest laws in Ukraine.
Wikipedia anti-protest laws.
Mandated licensing of internet providers, internet censorship, a broad definition of extremist activities which disallow NGOs and churches from engaging in support of the civil protests, an anti-mask law so nobody can cover their face from cameras, up to 15 days in jail for the unauthorized installation of tents, stages, and sound equipment. Dude, if there was a president who tried to panic force through all of these laws, just like protests are happening and then fucking try to whoosh, just instantly delete like all the civil rights their people had, this seems like a pretty legitimate reason to rise up against your government.
No, Vaush, you know where else this was done? By the Sandinistas in the 1980s when the U.S. No, why do you say?
Why is it always somebody else? Can we?
Because I'm telling you, this doesn't automatically make a government autocratic and it's not.
This isn't autocratic.
No, it doesn't make. I said these type of tactics don't automatically, by security forces, they don't automatically make a government autocratic.
This is essentially the illegalization of civil protest.
Yeah, and I'm saying this has been done whenever a government faces this type of insurrection. It's
we didn't. America didn't.
Not America. Places where America was supporting, right, violent paramilitaries.
And then it can be bad there too. Why do you keep comparing it to some other shit? I'm talking about whether or not the people in Ukraine had a good reason to rise up against their far-right dictatorial leader.
Well, I'm talking about the elements that were involved in the resistance and the uprising, number one.
No, let's talk about the average Ukrainian citizen. Okay, the president tries to pass these laws, all right? This tries to get forced through, okay? Is there not a right now for them to try to push the president out?
Yeah, they can absolutely protest. But again, at this point, elections hadn't been suspended right into the future. They can absolutely protest. And my point was that
these laws would have denied them the ability to protest, and they were already gunning down protesters.
They did engage, and I have to look at this. Hold on, this Wikipedia.
So wait. I thought we were leftists in favor of like the people's rights here. Do they not have a right to like rise up against this?
Yeah, they do, absolutely. I'm talking about actually the elements, in Ukraine, which tended to be responsible for the violent acts of against the government. And if you
compared the West backing protests against this to Russia arming paramilitary groups that have essentially engaged in soft secession in East Ukraine.
I'm saying paramilitary groups were also being supported, and they got some of the arms coming into Kiev from the United States, from Western governments. It's not just. I absolutely.
So where in your thing does it say that, by the way? Because while I was reading your thing, I didn't see any of that. I was just seeing like geopolitical reasons why they supported Ukraine protesters over the Armenian protesters. Where here does it say that?
I don't know. I have to look at that. It says that.
No. Because you keep running back to it. Where? What? Give me something I can control F.
Well, that article that I sent you wasn't about actually the U.S. Army, those specific groups.
What the fuck are you doing? Where?
Vaush, listen.
Where? What evidence? Tell me. Enlighten me, please. Where's the arming? That's the thing you keep bringing this to. I've read all of this. Where?
I haven't read all of it. I seriously did.
I read every single word. Where? Okay. Where?
I'm talking about the United States sending arms to Ukraine.
Is there any term I can search? Anything I can look up?
After Ukraine, yeah. Ukraine has received several batches of U.S. weapons.
I'm aware of that. What about, you're saying we sent them weapons to support military action against this leader. Can you give me
listen. After those elements actually overthrew the government, after he had to actually flee to Moscow, the United States stepped up arming of the Ukraine.
So you were lying. You were lying. You explicitly said we gave them arms to overthrow their president. What, we did it after?
I'm saying the government was overthrown illegally, right? And the US
I don't care. Wait, law? What are you, a fucking liberal? Jesus Christ!
What?
Law!
All right, Vaush.
Where? What armaments?
The U.S. has armed Ukraine.
No shit! Good! I hope we give them nukes. They shouldn't have taken them away. I don't care. You said you were comparing Russia funding tens of thousands of paramilitary troops in East Ukraine to the overthrow of this, and now it turns out all we did was support the protesters? You're comparing funding paramilitary groups to supporting the protesters?
No, I'm saying
You did.
Russia
You
is funded.
explicitly did that. You're not gaslighting me for an
Listen.
87th time. Chat!
Jesus Christ.
Did he not
No,
explicitly do that multiple times as I dug my
I'm
way
not
through all
denying
this
that.
information, only now to arrive invariably at the fact that no, that didn't happen. You could at least have the decency to lie about it.
All right.
Shut up! I hung up. Holy shit! Jesus Christ, the gaslighting. Oh my fucking God. Jesus Christ, thank God I have high self-esteem. Oh my God, what a piece of shit. I don't know if this is just floundering or whatever, but holy fucking Christ. Jesus. He's lying about Ukraine. Like, guys, I'm fully aware that, like, everything he said was either a lie or misrepresented. But, like, looking through this, like, well, okay, well, did we? Because I was thinking, like, well, that doesn't seem... At first, the claim was, we funded far-right Nazi groups in Ukraine to overthrow their leader. And then it was, we funded their protesters, some of which went to far-right groups who were on their side, and then they overthrew the government. And then it turned into, well, actually, like, they just overthrew their government, and, like, we like, supported them. We, like... Yeah, illegally? Illegally. God. Yes, Max Blumenthal is cited in this article. Law. Christ. Dude, don't you know this revolution is illegal? It's against Putin's law. Fuck me, dude. Holy shit. Every goddamn they're never leftists. They're all fucking liberals or autocrats with like spicy Soviet anthem shit going on. Dude, these laws aren't that authoritarian. I can't believe I'm listening to people who claim they're on the left. Holy fuck. Look at this. Gathering and disseminating information about the Berkut judges or their respective families. Gathering and disseminating information. Hey, if you get together and you talk with people about your betters, you're going to jail, bitch. Oh, no, well, it's just totally normal thing. You know, as fucking bad as the United States is, you know, and don't get me wrong, we did a lot of fucked up stuff, but like, holy shit. Guys, I want to be perfectly clear. If Biden attempted to pass even half these laws in response to anything the right did with anti-vax protests, or anything the left ever did with BLM, or just anything anyone did, if Biden ever for any reason attempted to do this, okay, I would, like, you've no fucking idea how hard I would support people out there on the ground at the fucking White House, okay? You've no goddamn idea. Holy shit. I'm sorry to repeat, Russia was putting pressure on them to crack down harder on the protesters. This guy was a Russian stooge putting authoritarian laws in place and killing protesters. Yeah, that's not surprising to me at all. This is like pretty standard stuff, right? Putin allies win elections after like a lot of suppression and like voter suppression and like a lot of weird sussy shit goes on, and then they like crack down and so on. As Moscow encouraged Yanukovych to crack down harder on the unrest and threatened to withhold crucial financial aid unless he did. They threatened to fucking sanction their country, basically, if they didn't kill more protesters. Oh my god. Oh my god. Every time I have one of these conversations, I emerge more of an American imperialist, okay? We gotta stop having these convos for my fucking sake before I emerge as a goddamn Henry Kissinger. Holy shit. Every time I talk with people who disagree with me, except for the last guy we talked to, the guy who wrote for the, Jacobin, he was cool. But apart from that, whenever we have these conversations, they just fucking lie. They lie to me. They just lie to my fucking face. Oh my god. Holy shit. Shu was in chat defending this guy's takes about being... Guys, don't worry, okay? Listen, blaming Shu for just stupidly defending any anti-interventionist position is like blaming a fucking wind turbine for like spinning when it's windy out, okay? I'm sorry. Like, Shu, you gotta be careful. That guy was defending interventionism. That entire thing that he was doing was pro-interventionism. This whole thing was me taking the anti-interventionist perspective. Like, explicitly. Law. The law. The law. They always bring up Yugoslavia when talking about how bad NATO was. Guys, you can condemn the NATO intervention in Yugoslavia or the way it was handled, but like it had nothing to do with anything. When NATO signaled its turn towards aggression when it happened in Yugoslavia, what does Yugoslavia have to do with Russia in terms of Russia's relationship with NATO before and after? What did they not think that like? Did they not think NATO had bombs? Did they did Russia like wake up and they're like, oh my god, I thought NATO was all like contracts and stuff. They actually have soldiers? That's crazy. Oh my god, you know? All All right. Give me five minutes. Chat, I'm answering any and all questions. All right? Yes, we'll watch the Adam Something video. We're going to do it right away. Can I talk to you for just 5 minutes? No. Everyone, chat, ignore everything that he said, okay? Because I probably only knew a third of the things that he was wrong on. All right? Literally, like, everything I knew things about, he was wrong on the thing that I knew the info about. So you can safely assume that he was wrong about literally everything. Did you do something different to your hair? Oh, a little bit. You know, just a little bit. What was the support for the protesters? The only thing I was able to find was just the Western government supporting them. That is the only thing that I was able to find. Like, okay, good, I support them. Go for it. This is an this is an illegal. You're illegally deposing your authoritarian government. Sound doing a cringe? I don't care. Drama frogs need to stop. Okay. Did you guys? Did you know Hassan said a thing and it wasn't super nice to you? I don't fucking care. All right. Holy shit. Non-stop with you people. Vaush coping. Oh, this person was a dumb fuck. Dude, the thing that's weird is, like, that guy was super, like, good faith over email. He liked a tweet calling you a pedo. No, he didn't. He liked a tweet saying that an image was funny, and it was funny. I don't care. Do you think I don't know that? What do you think? Do you think I'm unaware? Do you think I haven't seen? Do you think I don't have a massive community of hundreds of thousands of people? Do you think there's anything you know that I don't? Do you think there's any information you could give me? What are you doing by reminding me? Signaling that you know? What is the evidence? What are you getting from this? What's your angle? I don't understand. Oh yeah, President Sunday. Give me 10 minutes. Just so you know, your maiden is pronounced Oiro Maidan. I will never care, and I will never pronounce it that way, and I don't care. How's your Tinder game going? I haven't updated my pictures. I'll get there. Oh yeah, I was saying this before. This is going to seem like... no, maybe this is airing too much. No. It's just a funny little... Have you seen JXC's new video? No, I know that she's doing some beef thing with Hassan right now. I don't know. You think you're becoming more alpha of a leftist debater? I think that's a cringe archetype. Sigma is the new thing. Okay. You shouting law was the funniest shit in a while. I just don't... He just lied. He lied. He was like mocking me. Maybe you should have done your due diligence. You know, maybe you should have read up on the thing I gave you. You know, maybe if you'd read up, then you would know that, like, you know, what Russia's doing in Ukraine isn't different from what we did. We funded far-right Nazi groups to overthrow their government. I was like, well, I don't think I've heard about that. I'm looking through it, and his tone, remember how his tone softened when I started to actually look through his article? And then I looked through everything pertaining to the Ukraine situation, and nothing there mentioned any arms funding. And then I was like, well, okay, so where is that? And then he was like, well, actually, no, that happened later. Man. The frustrating thing is that I know there's nothing I could have done to make that conclusion arrive faster, because he would have just lied unless I had evidence that it wasn't the case, you know? Like, if I had said, so you're explicitly saying that we funded arms going to far-right groups to overthrow that leader, he would have been like, yeah, for sure. And then, like, I'd read through it, and he would have just lied that way, you know? Yeah, there's nothing that I could have been done. Absolutely nothing that I could have done. Did you need to yell? Damn, dude. Like, fuck. Yeah. It's kind of hot, not gonna lie. Yeah. Can we verify where the article came from? The article, Selective Wilsonianism by Arman Grigoryan. Selective Wilsonianism, Material Interests, and the West's Support for Democracy. By the way, inside of the article, it seemed mostly fine. It was just like a critique of the idea that the West does what it does to support democracy, which I have never, I do not believe that. Was it his article? I don't know. I didn't ask. Oh, yeah. Putin has explicitly said that Russians and Ukrainians are one people. I might be in the wrong on this, but the U.S. never directly aided the right sector / Azov, just Ukraine in general. There's some varying stuff on that. I think we temporarily had a ban on funds going towards them. I don't know how that parsed out. I think it got retracted later. It doesn't really make a difference because ultimately the Azov battalion thing is a massive whataboutism. If you're like, regardless of the political demographics in a country, like this is a situation where Russia is poising to invade Ukraine. In this instance, Russia's in the wrong. Ukraine is just defending itself. If the government of Ukraine was like super mega duper ultra super duper far right, like 100% Nazi, like full end to end, then I guess if you could argue that it would be like a liberation thing, then you could go for that. But like, let's not lie, all right? Russia's also got a lot of fucking Nazis in it, all right? Putin's like geopolitical endeavors are pretty heavily influenced by that Nazbol dude. It's not like Russia taking over Ukraine would be like an invocation of a sudden bastion of liberalism, progressivism, and leftist values or whatever. So, you know, yeah, having Wikipedia knowledge on a subject will generally elevate you above almost anyone who seeks to disagree. It's pretty much all you need.